ready. You ready to force it?
I'm ready to force it, man. That theme song just gets me so amped. I just listen to it over and over and over again.
I love it. It's like when people like I've done like a few videos like when we put that like the intro thing. People are like, what is that music? And that and the music to intro the Nightman.
Yeah.
Jazz.
It's very Mortal Kombat is what it says
to
me. Remember,
it is very Mortal Kombat. I should say.
Yeah. It's the 90s, right? That's everything's Mortal Kombat in the 90s.
I know, it's great. I'm here. We got my stack of Prime books here, and
ooh, super cool. I have you got the hologram and stuff too. Yep. I brought my Conan.
Oh yeah, I recently got that one too.
Rune, and I got this recently. Check this out. I showed this in the group. This is an original firearm script.
That is awesome.
Nice enough to send that to me. So what else you got? You got anything else good?
Actually, I was going to show off the stuff I got from ULTRACON last year.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Find out where my stack is here.
While he's digging through the stack, I'm just going to throw this out here and say good morning. Welcome to ULTRACON 2. It's actually the second year that we've done this, but this is the first live stream that we've done. And look, we've got someone saying hello already. Good morning. Anyway, thanks for joining us. You are in the middle of a 3-hour celebration marathon where we're going to talk about Ultraverse. We're going to interview some of the founders and creators, and we are your hosts. We are the two Stevens. Steven from Express. Tell everybody, I'm sure this is your channel anyway, right? So everyone knows you.
Oh, everybody, I'm big, huge Ultraverse fans. Like I've mentioned every time I do Ultraverse videos, like people should know by now. Is like I love the Ultraverse. I got a whole shelf of customs I've made, and got plenty more planned. And I've missed the Ultraverse ever since it's been gone. I loved it from the get go. It's like I remember driving to a comic book shop with like 3 hours from my house so I can get issue number 1 because there weren't many comic book shops when I grew up, and they all sold out. Didn't order that many, and had to go all the way. I remember my mom talking about like she didn't want to spend at the time. It's like hot book, and she had to pay $7 for the books. Like, I don't want. Are you sure you want this? It's $7. It's like yes, and I still have that copy, and of course I have like 50 others the same issue now.
Right.
Anytime I see a Prime number 1, I get it, and I got
the same way
from last year. I got all the silver foil covers. And one of the fellow members were selling those. I got all the different foil covers.
That's good stuff. We have more people selling. We had more people last year selling. I've been kind of hesitant to sell my stuff. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's good because people aren't wanting to give up their Ultraverse stuff.
That's true. I have a stack of Prime number 1s like this, and I don't want to sell one of them.
Yeah, I have somewhere I have about 40 something copies of Prime versus Hulk somewhere.
Oh, nice.
And I actually took a stack of them to California last year to get our first guest Scott to sign them for me. So he's autographed them. At some point, I'm going to let a few of them loose in the group. I'm going to try to get a few more signatures on them first. But
I would have more copies of this, but there was an eBay seller like about 10 years ago. They claimed they found a storage unit full of these, and they were selling them in like five copy lots.
Lots of 5, right?
Lots of 5 and Primes, hard case, and such. I won hard case and Prime. I was going to get 5 copies of each. And he mixed up the orders. I got 10 copies of hard case and no Prime.
Oh, man.
I was like, I have 10 copies of the hollow foil hard case.
Man, that's awesome.
Prime was my favorite. And
yeah.
As you can see.
Yes. Of course, it's got your action figure on it.
Yep.
Which is sweet. For everyone who wants to know who I am, I'm Steve Boyd. I am the vice president of ComicCollectorLive.com, and I'm also the founder of the Ultraverse Facebook group. And I started that just.
Thank you for starting that group.
The reason I started it was so I could meet people like you. I couldn't find a good place online to talk about Malibu comics and Ultraverse, and I was a retailer back then. I had in college, me and a buddy started a comic shop when I was 19 in our town, and Ultraverse had just started. It was right there at the 90s boom. The I mean, we were getting Image Comics, Malibu. We had posters on the wall. We had rune standees. We had a Tower Power, the spinner rack. We had all that stuff. And as a fan, later on, Ultraverse kind of went out. It kind of left the public consciousness for a while after the Marvel acquisition and stuff.
Yeah, Marvel kept them going for about a year, then they phased them out.
Yeah, they kept publishing. They kept publishing for a while, and we're going to talk about that with some of the guests today. Hopefully, they'll talk about it a little bit. But yeah, it's.
I know it's not feasible, but I would love to see Marvel release them to the original creators. Let them have the characters. We're not going to do anything with them. I know it's business sense. It don't make no sense to do, but as a fan, I would love to see the creators get their characters back.
This is my theme for the show is I'm going to try to avoid asking the creators like, you think we'll see the Ultraverse people back? I think they're probably that question they probably get asked all the time.
True.
But for fans like me and you and everyone watching this, we can talk about it. Okay. I don't think we've seen the end of it. I would love to see Marvel do something with the characters again in the format of how they were in the comics. Not like we saw Topaz show up in Thor Ragnarok, or a version of Topaz, right? But not the comic.
It's like a variant of Topaz because it literally wasn't the comic book Topaz.
Right. But I'm not convinced that we haven't seen the end of it yet. I would also love to see the return of Ultraverse. Who knows? It might be right around the corner. Marvel's been digging back up stuff.
Fantastic action figures.
Yes. Well, you can call, you guys, everyone call Steven and get him to, not me, call him, this guy, and get him to do the action figures for the new line. For sure. When that happens. You're great. You're talented at that. You're very good at it.
And they have the perfect buck for Prime with the Caliban. It's like, it is just such a. I'm working on another Prime for my shelf. I actually got 2 capes going to be for it. It's like the red and blue cape, and for the red cape, so I can do like either if I want to do the cartoon look, where you had the Final Form colors on the cartoon, but with the solid red cape.
Mm-hmm.
And I put magnets in the traps, so I can actually make the capes removable. But this body is perfect for Prime. It's just the build sculpt. It's like.
Yeah, he looks great. The final result of that will look amazing. I did not, of course, I can't do that, but I did bring a Prime figure.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that's all American Prime, baby.
That's from the alternate universe where he was worked for the government.
Yes, America.
Prime Captain America comic.
That's true. Yes, the cape. The cape is what made it for me. He's so awesome. Unfortunately, I tried to use the eagle that came with the 6-inch classified Spirit to have Prime holding the eagle, but the eagle is the same size as Prime, so it worked better with your Prime that you made than this one. But yeah, he's awesome. Very cool.
I'm a little biased too. Like I want more Ultraverse stuff, like figure forms wise, but they just make the character designs lend themselves so well to do toys.
Mm-hmm.
They just look great, and
all of it.
I'm so jealous of the guy who posted. He's got the working prototypes of Wave 2 of the Galoob figures.
I saw that he just posted them in the group. Oh my gosh, yeah, like.
And I would do pictures for like sculpting references for my Primeval and Sludge of the original, like the blurry pictures. And he's got the real things. It's just, they look so good. Those Wave 2 figures are so much step above the Wave 1 figures.
Mm-hmm.
Why we couldn't got those?
We could have got Rune, man. That's the one I want, and that's the one I want you to do. I am hereby requesting you to make Rune.
There's that hybrid vampire character like that. It's a griffin vampire-ish looking character. The body is straight up Rune. All I have to do is need a new head for it and some new feet. and it's there. It's just beautifully done.
Yeah. There's a Venom Null 2-pack where Venom has wings, like vampire wings in the back. Every time I see that, I think Prime or Rune. I think, oh, that would make a pretty sweet.
Robert, yes, there's a guy on the Ultraverse and Steven's Ultraverse group. He actually has working prototypes of those figures. He posted them. Was it last week? And,
yes. Yeah.
And it's like, wow. It's like they look so good. They're not the only one that's a resin is Siren. The rest of them are working prototypes, and they look so good. Oh, let's see if I can find it here on the.
I was shocked that those popped up in the group. I've always wanted to see those in person, but to actually have someone post pictures of them that has them, that's pretty sweet. Are you pulling those up so we can check those out? Yeah, sweet.
Oh, and Scott's here. We can wait from that when Scott's here.
Yeah, Scott is in there. Oh, hey! Good morning.
Welcome.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Scott.
Oh, I got it.
There you go.
There you go. We got you.
Okay.
Yay! There he is.
Welcome.
Thank you. So nice to meet you, Stephen.
Oh, Stephen and Stephen.
Yep.
Yeah, we met a few months ago whenever I was in California. So it's a good to see you again, Scott. As always, pleasure. Thanks for being on here with us.
Of course.
Yeah, and did I hear you right? You told me this was your first live stream.
Yeah.
That's criminal. That's just criminal. You should have been. You should be doing these like daily.
Well, I'm glad that we got to be the first live stream you be on, and hopefully get to do some a lot more.
Yeah.
That's sweet. So we don't really like, as far as the format goes, Scott, like I mean, I've just got some basic stuff, some questions, lined up for you and everything. But I would just, if you don't mind, just take a moment, introduce yourself to everybody, and we'll just tell them what you're doing, and we'll go from there. Okay.
So how many people are there?
Right now we got 8 in the audience right now. So, but there should be more rolling in here soon.
Now I have a question. Like Stephen Boyd, when I'm looking at you, does it look like I'm looking at you?
For the most part, you're kind of, you're looking just a little bit downward, but yeah, now there you go.
I could reposition.
Getting there. Yeah, like right around in there, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. You're good either way. You look great.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So anyway, tell everybody about yourself, Scott.
Oh, are we now live?
We are live.
We are live.
I'm Scott Rosenberg. I'm one of the founders of Malibu Comics, which I think someone did a count, and it's around 2,000 comics that have been made.
Wow.
I now have a company called Platinum Studios, which is comics rights based, where we develop for film and TV.
Oh, neat.
So I just like comics. I don't know what else to say in an introduction.
That's good. That was good enough. You've looking at your collection. I had a chance to look at some of your books. What I was impressed with when I met you was that I could tell that you were a fan. You were like old school fan too, and you started in comics at a very young age, right? I guess
13. Yeah. Well, actually, 13 is when I started selling comics, so I could keep buying them. I actually started reading comics, I guess as soon as I could read.
There you go. What was one of the first books that you read?
At the time, I was partial to DC, but at age like 5 or so, I was probably in Richie Richland.
Oh, there you go.
And Little Archies.
Harvey, nothing wrong with Harvey comics. I read those as well. Loved Richie Rich. Dollar the dog. Didn't he have a dog named Dollar?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I totally.
And he had a comic named Billions, Trillions, Zillions.
Yeah, there you go. I used to buy those at the grocery store. There was a spinner rack at our local at Piggly Wiggly, and I used to get them from there.
That's where I got my comics too, Piggly Wiggly off the spinner rack.
There you go. Great. I don't know if California has Piggly Wiggly out
No
there.
Piggly Wigglies here.
No Piggly
Not that I
Wiggly.
know.
All right. There you
It
go.
might-
Well,
Hours later on, changed names, but that's where I get my comics from. That until it was a long time before that anybody ever attempted to put a comic book shop in my small little town, and I loved it, and I was hooked.
one of the interesting things about being in the comic, both as a collector and in the industry and stuff, I'm amazed at how many people, they start young, they kind of get it in their blood, and they want to do more with it. Like I want to be a part of this, and stuff. It's not. I don't. My experience is from talking to writers and creators. There's not a lot of money in the business, but there's a lot of heart. I don't think a lot of people get in the business to make a ton of money. Maybe they do, but it looks like people do it just because they love comic books so much. And you started the distribution company as a means to fund your comic habit, right?
I started that when I was in college.
Okay.
To fund extracurricular activities.
Right on.
But that only went for about a year and a half or so.
Okay.
That's when I got into the publishing side.
Sure. And you, there's a number of independent imprints that your name's attached to that you started with, I think, Aircell. Is that one of them?
Yeah, but that was really always Barry Blair's.
Okay. I'm looking at some Eternity, Adventure.
Adventure
Yeah.
was originally started by Steve Milo at American Comics.
Okay.
And he wanted to concentrate more on his mail order business, so we took over the imprint.
Sure.
And then we started putting licensed titles in it.
Right on. And your first, whenever you started, I guess Eternity ended up either shutting down, and you consolidated everything into Malibu. Is that right?
Nothing was shut down. It was consolidated.
Okay. Consolidated. Yeah. Okay. And then your first title with Malibu was X Mutants. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was my first stab at publishing.
And it was a relative success, right?
Yeah, it was. It had a first print. I was expecting a few thousand, so we could at least hit break even.
Sure.
And it was in black and white because all I had was a credit card at the time. I couldn't afford color. But the first printing came in at 80,000, and the second printing came in at 50. So it was like 130,000 copies.
That is actually very impressive for an independent comic book back then. What year did that come out?
86, and we had a pretty high cover price, a weird one. It was $1.80.
That is weird for.
I did that on purpose.
There you go. Okay.
I figured people will know $1.75 sounds expensive, $2 sounds expensive, but $1.80 you kind of don't think about because it's just odd.
Clever. That's actually.
I think my very first Malibu comics was X Mutants comic.
Cool.
I should still have it in my collection somewhere. So.
Yeah, I do.
I'm a little embarrassed. I've heard of X Mutants. I had heard of them, but I didn't buy my first ones until just a few years ago. And they were some of the later issues. So the early ones I haven't had a chance to even to dig in through.
I can't claim I got any of the black and white ones, but I do have some of the color ones later on, and I just love the cover art on those, and the interior's matched, and it's just great books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever you say color, we're always happy.
That what's that experience like having a success for you're talking about this is how much money I had on my credit card and stuff, so clearly the budget was limited.
Yeah.
What was it like, that feeling of knowing you had sold 6 digits worth of comic books to people and they were?
It was amazing. I mean, our marketing budget, I had $400. and that was it. Now in those days maybe that was worth $1,200, but still not much. So what I could afford with that at the time was, remember CBG?
Yes.
The comic guy who came out every week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, both fans and retailers were looking at that. So we took out a full page with all black with white letters saying X Mutants, #1 summer '86. So I was glad the marketing worked. I'm glad the story worked, that everyone liked it. I mean, the art was fantastic by Ron Lim.
Mhm.
And
The artwork in those books were just amazing.
yeah, so I guess it inspired me to keep going.
Well, I'm glad it did because, and I loved everything about the Ultraverse and Malibu comics, and I got pretty much almost I have close to a full collection of them. I missed
That's
a
not
few.
easy. Especially if you go for some of the harder to find ones, that is not easy.
Yeah, I've tried, like, I've pretty much given up on making the full collection of the books because it's not that I can't find them, it's just extremely time consuming to find them. So what I've done is limited my collection down into like the really obscure things that you don't really see a lot of. Like let me see. Hold on, I've got it right here. Hold on. This is kind of sweet. I have a Prime digital watch.
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Which is kind of sweet. I don't know how many they produced of these or whatever, but like Malibu was big on marketing. I've got some old previews magazines where there were lots of you could buy, you know, I think it was Malibu coffee mugs and things like that. Scott, tell us a little bit about you're down to now. You've got Malibu. You've had a success. You've had some successes with books like X Mutants. I think Ferret, was that another one you guys published?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one that we die cut into like a ferret looking.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So the how did it come about that you guys were gonna do the Ultraverse to come up with a brand new line of comics and stuff, and how involved? Where does Spawn and Image Comics tie into any of that?
Okay, well, in terms of what the public was seeing, Image came first. And we didn't want to compete with ourselves. So at the time that we were distributing Image, we had come up with the Ultraverse and the characters and started on the storylines and started working on all of it because we had a 1-year distribution deal with Image. Which, because of some of the comics coming late, was probably 1.5 years, that we would then start the Ultraverse when Image started its own distribution. So we weren't competing with them, we weren't competing with ourselves.
Right.
So that's kind of the timing.
So, like, the reason I say this is because if you, I'm a Spawn collector as well. If you open up the first page or the back cover of the Spawn #1, Malibu Comics logo is right there on the inside cover.
Yeah.
So Malibu helped publish those first few issues to get them going, right? To get like Image to get the books out on the shelves. Is that right?
Yeah. The first is basically the first year of solicited comics. So, you know, so it was all of them from all of the guys.
Right.
And I remember that we wanted to get publicity for it, and we were calling publicity firms, and no one would like take our money. They all said, no one's going to care.
Right.
I'm like, that's just not right. That's not true. So I finally found a smaller one that the guy was into comics, and he did believe it could be something. And a short time later, when the Image guys, when we announced that they were coming to us, that announcement also caused Marvel's stock to fall that same day. And then CNN came into our office.
Oh, yeah. Shaking things up a little bit.
Yes. So we always tried, for each of the comics, we did a different marketing campaign because each one's from a different guy. And everyone wanted their own thing. So we did that. And we love marketing. I mean, that's just something at Malibu.
And you were good at it, too. You guys were really good at it.
We enjoyed it. So we did that with the Image titles as they were getting ready to launch their own publishing company, because at first they really weren't set up to do that. So that's why we were doing it. And we were happy they came to us because every publisher wanted to make a deal with them. Right.
And they that I would have to say that probably loaded a few bags of cash in your hands as well, which gave us probably helped get some of the Ultraverse going, right? It like did that kind of pump some that kind of prime the pump so to speak?
Well, what it did mostly was to give us time
Sure.
so that we could launch. We were planning to launch in June of '93, and we wanted one title, the first, one, then three, then I forgot what the order was, but we wanted to launch in June and have then the next issue and the next issue and the next issue of the different titles, and have all of them story-wise, from a shipping standpoint, be in the same timeline.
Sure.
And it gave us time to really play around with that and to get that down. And yes, it was very profitable with the Image. It was profitable for us and it was profitable for them.
The groundwork you put into doing the Ultraverse too, like building up the universe and reasoning how people got powers and set the whole events, and it was so well done on that. And you can tell you took the time and like thought through everything out.
Thank you. That's the geek in all of us. Our staff was amazing. We had very little turnover. It usually took a marriage or someone moving away or something like that for anyone to go. It was basically once they started as an intern, if they made it past that, they were there for our whole time.
It's like a dream job back then. It's like this is for geeks that have such a great collaborative space and working on such a great project.
Yeah.
Well, and you're right in the middle also of the 90s, just explosion of comics and stuff. I mean, and not only that, but like the smaller publishers, I feel, are responsible for a lot of chances that like some of the larger publishers had to take. I mean, you ended up getting the death of Superman in there. They broke Batman's back. I think that you guys might be responsible for part of that. like as you did so much to shake up the industry and to change things, and you said, okay, well, we don't like this, we're going to do it this way. And it was just a great time as a retailer. Ultraverse, Malibu in general was really good at marketing and was awesome with connecting with retailers and everything.
Yeah.
So, and that's another reason why I love Ultraverse so much. It's not just the comics itself, but the story of what you guys did and built in that period of time is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and we really did it with the help of retailers. I mean, we were, as you mentioned, we worked very closely with them.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. One of the guys on the live stream right now. By the way, thanks everybody for joining us. You're watching the ULTRACON live stream. And one of the questions that came through is, Scott, someone's asking, what was a typical day like for Scott Mitchell Rosenberg during Malibu's heyday?
What are you defining as the heyday?
Well, I would say, I'd say anything within that first year when you guys were knocking stuff out of the park, like 90. What is that? 94, 93?
Okay, so first year of the Ultraverse. Then.
Yes.
Well, during both Image and Ultraverse, because those are a couple of years kind of line up. There'd be lots of. First of all, there'd be meetings all the time with me, Tom Mason, Dave Olbrich, and Chris Ulm. So we were always all on the same page for everything. And then there was a lot of marketing kind of ideas that Tom and I would go over. And in terms of coming up with different kind of launch campaigns, that would be with Chris Ulm, talking editorial wise. Mm-hmm. And there was also working on different licensing deals. For instance, I don't know if you know how Ultraforce, the animated series, came about. But essentially, we wanted an animated show. CBS had made us an offer. I said no. I didn't really know you don't say no to those kind of offers at the time. But, young and dumb, but it worked.
Right.
What I wanted was to be able to be involved in the marketing of the show. Because I know at CBS, it would just be one of a bunch of shows. And who knows if it makes, how far it even makes it or if it even gets made. So we wanted the show on the air, but we had to pay for it. I knew where I wanted to get it from. There was something called the Bobot Action block at the time that was around the whole country, and they had 2 hours of programming and of all animated. And I wanted to make a deal to buy one of their slots, which I didn't know was unusual. Evidently, we were the first one to buy a slot. But we had to get it funded. So we did a whole campaign targeted at potential licensees and studios knowing what we're doing. And we found a toy company that was willing to go ahead and give us the licensing revenue needed and them and a couple other licensees to buy a time slot and produce the show. And it was kind of chicken or the egg, because most places we talked to wanted the show to come first. We needed the toy line to get a show if we were going to be very involved in it.
Right.
And I mean, that's how it came about. And there was some fun or weird things, actually not fun, but weird things. Like, we found out that as we were planning to have advertising on the show from the different licensees, which is what the licensees wanted and which is what Bobot wanted, it didn't occur to any of us that at that time you weren't allowed to advertise on an animated show its own product. So I'm thinking, okay, everyone's expecting to. How do we pull this one off?
Right.
So I approached Bobot and I said, what if the show starts some number of seconds late and ends some number of seconds late, so that we could put in Ultraverse related commercial on both ends of the show, but not technically during the show. It might be when people were turning the dial to it, so to speak, because it was right at the time it was starting. That would be a commercial instead of the show that very second.
Right.
And he loved that idea. And I don't know if it's because of us or not, but Fox and others a year or two later started doing that.
Well, it's a great idea. Like, working in, it's like, hey, technically it wasn't part of the show.
Right. We obeyed the laws.
Remind me never to play chess with you. Like, honestly, it's
or Monopoly.
Right, or Monopoly. There you go. You have to really be 2 steps ahead of the game and think outside of the box in order to make some of these things happen. So the fact that you were able to, kind of pivot into something like that, no wonder you were successful as you were. So that's pretty awesome.
We were also the first comic line to launch with TV ads.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we did that, because, it is when the press looked at it, it looked like a multi-million-dollar budget, but we didn't have money like that.
Right.
So I was reading through the various contracts and deals that I was provided with that MTV and Cartoon Network, and I forgot which other ones were around at that time. And they had some interesting, I guess, loopholes in the contracts that if you get a 90, and I may be a couple points off, but you get a 90% discount if you're giving something away for free. And then it goes to 95% if you give a phone number that doesn't cost them to call, and then 95% if you're giving away something completely for free with that. So we found one company who wanted to get the calls because that was their business, collecting those kind of numbers. And that's when long distance wasn't free back then. And then we also made a deal with Steve Milo, his American Comics, where he had a big mail order company that focused on retailers. So he was more than happy to send them the free comic, which was a limited edition one, and his catalog.
Sure.
So we were able to do that and literally get a 95% discount. Now, the next obstacle that we had with that is that's for just, I think it's called run of air, where they can play it anytime they want, which would mean 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning when we didn't want it to air.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we figured, well, what if we make friends with the guy who's the scheduler? Because they have a lot of ability to put it wherever they want, especially if an ad drops out somewhere. And we became friends with the scheduler. And he knew we were being, friendly for a reason, but no one else was. Right. Everyone yelled at them. So that's how we got them all into, or almost all of them, into prime time and in the right spots, for right time slots for advertising it. And then, of course, we made the commercials ourselves.
Which makes perfect sense. If you want to be scheduled, become friends with the scheduler, right? I mean, that's what you got to do. It's just so interesting. There's real quick. I just got a couple questions in the chat. Someone wants to know. There was a comic line. You guys, one of the imprints that was under Malibu was Bravura, and there was a stamp program that came out where you could collect the stamps that was in the thing and mail off for a book. Just so I'm not losing my mind, that book did come out, right? It was it
Bravura number 0 or something like
I think it was, yeah. It was like a ultra limited book or something. It said. I think that book came out. Someone in the chat was asking.
I'm looking it up.
Okay, yeah, I'm relatively certain I have that book, but I didn't want to misspeak because there may be a platinum edition. And also, while you're looking that out, somebody's asking, what was the biggest selling comic in the Ultraverse line? Also,
I don't remember with certainty, but up there was Prime and Rune. And Rune, we had started, that was with Barry Smith drawing and Chris Ulm creating,
right?
Or creating together, I guess. And we put a 3-page story in the back of 7 of our books that all came out in the same month of October. And then there was, I forgot what you had to collect or do to get the Rune 0, but then there was a Rune 0 promotion that went on top of that. So we promoted the launch of Rune through all of our titles in order of how the story would go.
And did all of the flips make a poster too, like on the back side of books? Or?
Yeah.
All those to put all that on, lay that all that out, so I can get the big picture Rune.
Well, and they also ended up releasing, I think, when you mailed off for the Rune 0, because there was certificates inside of each one of them, I believe. And when you mailed off for Rune 0, I think you got this massive poster also of, or maybe it was only given to shops, I'm not sure, but I have one. It's that image of all the covers pushed together, that awesome image of Rune.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes, Bravura 0 came out.
Okay, there you go. The answer is yes. Bravura 0 comes out. Now I have to look in my collection when we're done with the live stream and make sure I have that one. So yeah, as someone's saying you should teach a class in grassroots marketing, Scott. I have to say, I think I agree with them.
I love grassroots marketing. I've actually been invited to do guest lectures at a bunch of colleges to the marketing classes.
I can see why.
And it was fun.
It's a no-brainer. No-brainer. Go ahead.
I was going to say, backtracking like on the Ultraverse cartoon, it's like I recently went back and rewatched it after years, and then it's one of those 90s cartoons that still holds up.
I'm glad you're saying that because I feel the same way about it. It's
a
lot of love.
I try to go back and watch like another. I'm not going to say which one, independent comic book that got an animated series, and it did not hold up. But Ultraverse holds up really, really well.
I remember that when we would get the episode in from Deke in the overseas house that was actually doing the animating, there were always some changes that we wanted, and that weren't technically in the budget to do, at least for the animators. So we went into the Avid room at Deke. Fortunately, I was friends with the owner, and we literally were in there 24 hours a day for like 1 or 2 days for each episode. That was a guy named Scott Thomas that went in there, and we would make our own fixes. Like when we had a guy with hair was on fire, the fire wasn't coming in right, so we fixed it. And another scene with the helicopter, we had to put that in there. So we did all the things that didn't come out perfect ourselves.
Oh, nice. And I completely forgot in the final issues where it was doing like the breakthrough stuff, and Electrocute was wearing her new costume that was going to come out in the unreleased issues of Strangers. And it's like I was watching the episode, it's like, wait a minute, that's not her original costume. That's the one that we never got to see in the comics. So it was really cool. Like that was an Easter egg for me. It's like
That's cool.
I remember looking at some of the pages of unreleased Strangers books that didn't get when they were going to change your costume, and I saw it in the animated series. It's like, why did they get in it before we could finish up the Stranger story?
One of the things that I enjoyed about and I do still watch the Ultra Force cartoon. I'm ashamed to say I have a bootleg of all 13 episodes. I think that you guys ended up making. It's totally 90s, but it's so cool. You guys were pretty true to the comics, pretty faithfully. I mean,
you're right. You're dead on right. That's why we said no to CBS.
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons, because we want it really to be true to what it is. Because sometimes the studios, and they're allowed to, just run off on their own direction on something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really, tie into the lore the same way.
Sure. And that gave you guys lots of creative freedom to say, hey, this is what we want to do. So it appealed to the fans beyond like what people would call a spiritual successor to the comics or a love letter to the comics or whatever. It's actually pretty darn true to the comics themselves. Pretty faithful adaptations. Yeah. The theme song, we were talking about it before we even started the live stream. The theme song still rocks. To this day, the animation is solid. I recommend, I think at some point, I think there was a channel called Tubi not too long ago that had the episodes on there.
It's a free online streaming service. That's where I rewatched all the episodes out on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
They're good, really good quality. And I was like watching them all. I was like, this is really good. And then I start watching the other ones. I was like, go back to Ultra Force.
Yeah. We are actually beating Marvel, the Marvel Action Hour, the X-Men portion of it. When in any of the markets that we were head to head, we actually were beating them in the ratings.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I just saw a message come by saying that it sounds like at Malibu, it's not business as usual. Yeah, I mean, that's where we all just thought differently. That's why Tom and Dave and Chris and I would get together all the time, breakfast meetings, and try to figure out not what we can do just based on what other people have done, but what aren't they doing? I'll give you an example. At the San Diego Comic-Con, we had a big booth, and we built the whole thing, and it took a long time to build it, of course. And then the fire department came in. Oh, and so we were planning to have lines, because that's when we were doing the Malibu Comics signature series, where you can get the comic signed by a bunch of people, and we had signers all day. So there was going to be a line, but that's when the fire department came in and said, no lines outside of your own booth. So they got my attention when they said lines. Lines, box. Okay. So I came back, and Chris and Tom and Dave were looking at me because I had just talked to Faye, who was running it. And I said, well, and they said, what are we going to have to do? I said, move the entire booth 12 inches so that people could stand up, not forward, but they'd have to stand up against the wall, like that. And we had like rune tattoo, temporary tattoos. So we would make sure the line was always being entertained, because there was a significant line, and everyone was very nice about being within our lines of the booth. Now, moving it wasn't particularly simple, but all of our planning would have been completely screwed without that. So, that's some of the kind of things that we did. Not fun the moment we did it, but I mean, looking back, it's kind of funny. But yeah, we like to not do things normally.
I have footage on my channel of one of the conventions that I went to in '93 in Philadelphia, and there's about 30 seconds of the Ultraverse, the Malibu booth there, and it was everyone was definitely entertained. There was a lady there, I remember, at the front putting tattoos on people. Diane. Yeah. She was super nice. I have her on video, so. Yeah, that was That was pretty awesome.
That was a great show. It was so busy, and wasn't it their first show?
I think so.
Yeah, and it was so busy.
That was the same one. I believe that's the one where Peter David and Todd McFarlane had their classic, the matchup, that big, the rivalry debate or whatever over writer versus artist and stuff. I don't know. I think that took place at that particular convention. So that's pretty sweet. I actually have a question I wanted to ask you last time when I came down and saw you, and I totally forgot. So I'm going to squeeze this in. In the 90s, you saw a lot of companies crossing over with each other. You saw Marvel did it with DC, Valiant did it with Image and stuff. The fact that Image had a relationship built up with Malibu, was there ever any plans for a Spawn Nightman crossover or anything like that?
No, because for the first year, from a focus standpoint, it really made the most sense marketing-wise that it's image.
Sure.
So if there's crossovers, it'd be within their own books.
Right.
Crossovers. But everyone was getting their footing and everything for that first year. It was, it just was flying because it was so busy and so many people wanted them, and we had to figure out the print runs and estimate how many people might want it beyond that and guess it wrong every time, which made them more valuable, which is nice.
Sure.
But yeah, there was a lot going on. And there's multiple marketing campaigns going on, essentially one on top of the other and crossing over into each other when the books were being released.
Gotcha. I have another project you guys worked on, Nightman.
I recognize the signature in there.
Yeah, that is right. You should. That's yours right there. That's it. And it's personalized to me, but I could technically send it to Steven if I wanted to, since we have the same name.
You're right, Eddie Steven.
That'll go in my will to you, Steven. I'll leave that to you, man.
Oh, I appreciate it.
So
I don't know which one. I'm kind of a little gray here.
One other tidbit that happened. Youngblood was actually the first independent comic ever to hit #1.
Very cool. It's like, I know it's like they start doing like Rob's working with Loose Collector Toys right now and doing his Extreme line of figures, which are those. They get the first two ones we're doing Blood Wolf and Cabot. Those look really good. I just wish you still had the rights to Youngblood. I would love to see those in figure form.
Well, I actually am involved with the rights for Youngblood.
Yeah, Thursday Platinum still has rights.
Oh, hey, reach out to. I want to see those figures get made too.
Cool.
What you don't see probably is Scott has those figures sitting on his shelf, like directly to his right. He's like, maybe I'll sell them.
I love Youngblood. It's like the color, the comic designs, the character designs were so good. Bad Rock, Die Hard, Shaft, all those, Chapel. That is so cool. I didn't realize that you had for the rights on the Youngblood. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this might be a good way to kind of flow into Platinum Studios a little bit and talk about that. Tell us about Platinum Studios.
Well, it's focused on comic book IP only. So it fills all of at least my geek needs, or a bunch getting into it. We're developing movies and TV. I took a few years off, so I'm coming back into it right now to work on like a Cowboys and Aliens sequel to the graphic novel, which we should start scripting. We're going through writers right now in a few months. So looking forward to that and hope that we find the financing that we want for it. And there's a bunch of different books that we're working on, some for series. Like we had one called Gunplay that won we had this thing called the Comic Book Challenge each year for a few years, and it's where everyone could vote on seeing the pitches from the creators and which one they wanted. Well, one of the years, most of the votes went to a comic called Gunplay, which is set in the 1870s and is about a possessed gun who, when it's in the hands of someone, that person, until they can get rid of it, which is not an easy thing to do, makes them also immortal like the gun, and they have to kill a person a day. And the lead teams up with this kid that he finds that can read people's most inner, soul-worthy thoughts, usually bad ones, so that he can concentrate on trying to kill those who are bad as opposed to someone who's innocent. But he doesn't always read things in context, so that the kid can be wrong at times. But anyway, I mean, it's interesting to realize that came in, which has nothing to do with superheroes at all, as the top vote getter that year. So right now we're developing that for a series, and we have another group who wants to develop it for a movie if the series doesn't work. So one way or the other. And we picked up a graphic novel that came out a long time ago called Killing Demons. Not from us, it was from another publisher, and actually the creator. And we're developing that right now to go out and pitch his TV. We lost a year to the strike, as we did on a whole lot of things.
Sure.
That said a lot of things back.
Oh, yeah. And then it gets even worse because some people had other things scheduled. So you're not necessarily starting day after strike. There might be some other thing that they had, that they're already involved with that has to do.
Oh, yeah.
So, that caused a little stir. But that's a lot of what our focus is. And, I want something else to be like Men in Black was with Malibu, which, by the way, to get that one made, when someone was asking what I was doing in like my day-to-day activities, Men in Black is a good example of that. I had pitched that to every studio 2 to 3 times each, and they passed 2 to 3 times each until we finally got the right package together where one of them said yes and was willing to do the merchandising deal that I wanted, because we were too young at the time. This was it was late 80s. So not far from getting out of college, actually. So I didn't know to ask for producer credit at the time. My bad. But I was like, these guys keep passing. And I went to an agent and he said, hey, they're willing to hear your same pitch again and then again. That's something they don't do. So there must be something there.
Right.
And then, it finally worked. It was the #1 movie on the planet. And my daughter just went to Universal Florida, and the Men in Black ride is on its 21st or 22nd year there now.
Oh, right. Oh man, yeah, that whole franchise blew up on its own, right? It had multiple sequels, animated series, action figures, and everything.
Yeah.
Going back for a second to Ultraverse, that's another thing that I really liked about Ultraverse too, and it's unique. The story of Ultraverse is unique in that it was the flame for Ultraverse did not burn long, but it burned hot. It was one of the few comic properties that in its short time hit comics, it hit action figures, it hit television, commercials, and it's a unique story. If you look at all of comic books, everybody always focuses on the crash of the 90s and all that stuff, but the story of Malibu, I think, deserves its. I've said this to you before. I think you guys need to do a documentary on Malibu. I would love to see that.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
that's when Tom's memory would help, because he's usually the best on memory.
Right.
Those series where the toys that made us type things, your Malibu and Ultraverse would be great for that kind of style of documentary, and just interview, telling the history stuff. It's so interesting. It's so cool.
Well, if anyone listening wants to do it.
Scott, how does it feel, looking back, we're now about 30 years out from Ultraverse, and you still have a community of fans that love the work, that still appreciate you guys, all the creators and stuff. How does that make you feel as a comic fan and someone in the entertainment business?
I mean, I think it's an amazing thing. And it hits all levels. It hits as a comic fan. It hits as a geek, which sometimes could be different levels of comic fan. It hits on a business side and just on the longevity of just how, especially coming from comics, how things can live forever. And hopefully Marvel, through some administration, finally puts new ones out. Although it sounds like they're sneaking little things like the gems out. But
I heard about the gem getting the 7th gem coming out here recently.
Yeah.
My theory on that, and I told Steve before we started the thing, I was going to try to avoid talking about. I'm not going to ask anyone when do we think when we're going to start seeing the characters again. I don't know if you guys know. You guys don't necessarily know that. That's more in Marvel's hands. But
right.
Seeing what we're seeing, the trickling out of this little thing here, and looking at what Marvel's doing. Certainly bringing back other older properties.
Yes.
We're now seeing, ROM coming back into the fold, Micronauts and things like that. I don't think we've seen the end of it yet. I think they're planning something. I think we're going to see something. What do you think?
I hope, I really do. And it does seem like this more than ever before, the way they're seeding these things out, that they might get over their weirdness, because at some point they were saying they couldn't publish Malibu comics because of the contracts. That such doesn't make sense. When they bought the company, they were publishing the comics.
Right.
It wasn't breaking a contract then. No. It certainly isn't years later.
That never made sense to me. And it's that myth is pushed so hard too, like in different communities. It's like the content licensing rights is why they don't do anything. It's like, it's standard license rights with any creator things. It's not.
Yeah, there's percentages that are shared with participants. Big deal. There are a lot of the time. I guess most of what Marvel has, maybe they don't share with creators, but they do have creator participation agreements on new stuff that gets created.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it turns into money or not, but they do have that, and they're just participants in things. They're called, creators, and so there's no real reason that I could see.
And it's just, I just don't get it. It's like, people, the fandom's out there. They want it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If we do get another, if we do get a prototype #1, if we do get a Rune #1 and stuff, they better have hologram covers. They have to have either something, a die cut, a hologram, some kind of callback to
those holograms are how we ended up getting those really great spinner racks that we developed. They're the ones that the comics don't get hurt on, which is kind of original. We loaded them up with holograms, and they were being sold direct to retailers. And basically, we couldn't afford to put an expensive spinner rack in every store on our own. So what we did is we made these hologram covers, and they were only available for retailers who bought the display, and they knew that they could pay for the display in a second by selling the hologram covers. So it really worked all the way around. I'm looking at 3 of them in my home office right now.
Breaks my heart. I wish I knew. We had a Tower of Power in our store. I wish I knew where the thing was. I don't know what happened to it. I think my buddy who co-owned the store took it. But that thing was amazing. It was one of the centerpieces of the store for sure.
Hey, Dave.
Oh, hey, it's Dave Olbrich. How we doing?
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. I can always hear your voice.
yeah. Even when I'm just sitting at my house.
Hey, look, it's Scott Rosenberg.
Hello. We were just talking about you guys.
I know. I had to get on to defend myself.
Hey, listen, we are, just for anyone tuning in, we are in the Ultraverse, the ULTRACON live stream. It's the second year we've done it on the Ultraverse Facebook page. You guys need to check us out if you're not a member. It's fun. It is a safe space to talk about Malibu and Ultraverse, and we can enjoy it. and we don't have to worry about judgment. We can just show off our die cuts and hologram covers and talk about the good old days.
Now,
So
you know this has never
yeah.
this has never been true when I'm on the air.
Oh man, this is awesome. What's it like? Do you guys when having each other, even in a virtual room, like are you feeling the synergy here when you guys were in the offices together? Or is it recalling any memories of conversations and stuff in the office?
The thing about being in the office is that there's a certain chemistry that we had where we were all sort of in close quarters together. So all the desks were really close together, and somebody could yell out what was either a smart or a dumb idea, and you could get instant feedback on it. And somebody could take the dumb idea and say, well, that's stupid. Why don't we do this? And then another person could say, well, no, that's stupid. Why don't we do this? And so it would just sort of build. There was never like an official meeting where somebody would pitch an idea. You would just throw it out to the room. And so
I think more businesses need that. Hey, that's a stupid idea. Let's do this thing.
Right. Well, the other great thing is, I mean, and I think Scott and Dave can attest to this. We had a lot of stupid ideas, but you don't. The trick is you don't call somebody out for their stupid idea and make it personal. You just say, well, that may or may not work. Why don't we do this? So you just take the dumb idea and build it out into something better. And so without any recrimination. So there's no consequence of having a bad idea. There's just because you don't want to create that area of fear where you're afraid to throw out a bad idea. And
yeah, but
so
sometimes a bad idea is just a really good germ of a good idea. You just got to edit it, mold it, and revise it. And our team was really great at that. I mean, really great.
And there was a thing where and I realize I'm monopolizing my time now. Is that there's this thing where when we were with the founders creating the Ultraverse around the Scottsdale table, and some creator would throw out an idea, and that idea would sort of get ridiculed or laughed at or whatever, and we'd move on to another idea, and then after lunch we'd come back and say, that idea that Hudnall pitched, that doesn't sound so stupid now. What if we did, X, Y, or Z? So you never know where the bad idea or the weird idea or the crazy idea is going to yield fruit.
So it was kind of like making somebody would put a pot on a stove, throw some stuff in it, and then it may end up being a soup, but then somebody says, we should add something in here, right? So very collaborative in that regard then.
Yes. And because the other thing is that, and again, I'll let somebody else speak in a minute. Is that
go ahead, Tom, you're good.
now I was busy making my jokes and I forgot what I was going to say.
Now you're just bragging about your memory. You can't forget.
I'm old now. But the thing is there's a great sort of chemistry that comes from all being in the same room together. And it's not like, I don't think maybe you could put us all in a room like today and come up with something by 5 o'clock, but it doesn't work that way. It's basically the chemistry builds over a period of time, and you develop a sort of narrative shorthand or conversational shorthand where it's just, yep, nope, yep, nope. And, because there'd be many times where Scott would just throw out, hey, I was just on the phone with this person. Do we want the rights for X? And we'd just sort of stop and go, no, we don't want the rights to X. And then like 5 minutes later, somebody would say, well, maybe we do want the rights to X. How much is it? Well, they only want $500 for a year's lease, for a year's contract or whatever. And then we would try to figure out, well, who would write it? Who would draw it? And so then it would be, it would just sort of take on this weird shape, like a sculptor, where you start out with a big block of clay and nobody likes it. And then you just start chipping away at it until suddenly it's a statue.
Yep.
This is amazing.
That's why when somebody says, people come up to me a lot and they say, whose idea was that? And it's like, well, it kind of Scott said this, and then Dave said this, and then Chris said this, and then Dave ran some numbers, and then Scott made some phone calls, and then, I said, what if we do this? And so whose idea is that?
Right.
That's a stunningly accurate representation of what went on.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so and we would all sort of take, you can also you couldn't take sole credit or you couldn't take sole blame, because it's like, well, that's a stupid idea. It's like, well, we all kind of made it, and that's that's a great idea. Well, we all kind of came up with it, and so that's there. I'm done now.
No, that's awesome. Everyone, we have Dave Olbrich and Tom Mason joining us now.
And I have to get off in about 5 minutes.
No worries. Scott, do you have anything else you wanna say before you have to hop off here?
No, Dave and Tom can say it all.
I would just like to say it's great to see Scott again.
It is really good to see you, Scott.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Scott, for coming on too.
We are.
Hey, Scott, you going to be at WonderCon?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully I'll run into you
there. Yeah.
All right. That would be good.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Wait, I'm going to be there too.
Hey,
Yeah,
that's cool.
You are.
We're really appreciative you took some time out to hang out with us, and
You're very welcome.
Tell us all that stuff. This is Tom. No, you've got to stick around, dude. You're going to be around here talking.
I thought I was just going to come on and wrap this up.
Oh no, we got to stay here till Kurtis gets here.
I got some notes here. We got to go over and stuff.
Is there math?
You guys, Steven and Tom and Dave, nice seeing you again.
Yep.
Thank you so much again. It's like it was a pleasure getting to talk to you. And
thanks.
And like what somebody said in the comics too, we need like a show. It's the comics that made us. That would be a great documentary series.
Yeah, it would be. I'd love.
Have a great weekend, Scott.
Talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Bye, Scott.
And,
all right, man. That was awesome. That was so cool.
I thought he'd never leave.
Oh, and before we get into our next segment, we do have a little bumper for the next one. We got another fellow Ultraverse alum.
Hi, this is Roland Man, former Malibu Comics editor, and you're watching the ULTRACON live stream. Make mine Silverline.
One of the linchpins. That guy's awesome.
I just talked to him like 2 days ago.
Roland would have been on here with us. He just had I think he was doing a signing or something at another, maybe a store appearance or something. The guy's busy all the time.
And you think that's some kind of excuse?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I should have done that. That's what I should have said. Oh, come on.
Right.
He did make the bumper though, which was good.
Hey, thanks. I got all sorts of cool stuff on my wall.
That's
I have
awesome.
a question though.
Yes.
Who is Mr. NCIS? I don't believe we've met.
Oh, my name's Jarrod Raffin, and I have a toy channel, comic book channel and stuff, and I just
cool.
Big Ultraverse fan, like been from day one, and I reached out when Steven was talking about doing this, and I was like, hey, if you want to, we can host it on my channel, and would love to do like a live panel of this, and
that's awesome.
And I completely, he's the brainchild of it for sure.
I do all the really cool custom Ultraverse stuff that shows up on the channel. Oh, that's so great.
Yep. I got there's all my Ultraverse customs I got done right there.
Jarrod, it's great to meet you.
Dave, you need to look at his shirt. You need to see.
I
know.
Isn't that amazing?
It's terrific. Yeah,
it's a shirt that can be ordered on TeePublic, everyone.
Really?
There we go.
Yes.
So
and I got.
I believe Kurtis is going to be 100% on time. So if you have questions, you might want to get them. You might want to roll them in.
Might want to squeeze them in now. Okay. Right. I didn't really have a ton of stuff, a format planned out on this. It's just kind of throwing some stuff out here. And Dave and Tom, you guys were right there at the beginning of Malibu. Dave, you had some experience in comic books before coming on to Malibu, correct? You worked with there was a magazine called Amazing Heroes, right?
Yeah, well, that's something Tom and I did together.
Oh, you guys both did that. Okay.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
We met working at Fantagraphics.
The only comic experience I had before Tom was I ran a comic book store. I was the manager of a comic book store in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Gotcha. Okay.
I had no comic book experience before I started Fantagraphics. I had an art and design experience in publishing, but it was not comics. It was newspapers. But I came on board as an art director at Fantagraphics, and then Dave came on board as the publisher of Amazing Heroes.
And what Tom won't tell you is he's an astonishingly great cartoonist.
Yeah, that's right. I drew this bookcase behind you.
That's where you guys met then. You guys met at Fantagraphics?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very cool. And so you were both there during the time that Scott was talking about when Malibu first started with X Mutants and all those two as well, right?
Do you want to do the Reader's Digest version of the origin of Malibu, Tom?
I want whatever you guys are going to toss out, because
I don't want to talk about it at all.
I told Steven, I said when we started this, Scott will probably we'll have questions for him. We just need to wind Dave and Tom up and put them in a direction and go.
Yeah,
so you guys are in charge.
So
you want to do it, Tom? You want me to?
Well, here's the why don't I start this one, and then you go in and you plug the holes or correct me when I'm wrong.
Works for me.
Scott Rosenberg had a distribution company called Sunrise, and he financed two comic book companies. A comic book company called Eternity Comics, based in Brooklyn, New York, and one called Amazing Comics in West Virginia. And then, because of the way the market was working at the time, and because of the black and white boom in comics that was going on at the time, it was easier to sell a new #1 title at higher numbers from a new company than it was from an existing company. So then Scott had a company called Imperial Comics that he launched out of the Eternity Comics offices with the same people. And then Amazing Comics had Wonder Comics, which he launched out of the same company with the same people. And then Dave and I were still at Fantagraphics at that time, but Dave had left and gone to work for Scott at Sunrise. And we weren't involved in any of those other companies at all. And Dave came up with the idea. Well, you tell this part better about how you came up with the idea for Malibu Comics.
Yeah, so in those days, comics came out on Fridays. So after putting all the boxes into all the retailers' cars and trucks, we'd all have pizza afterwards. It would get to be a really long day. And Scott turned to me at mid-pizza and said, "What do you think you want to be doing in 5 years?" And I said, "Well, I see what everybody else is doing. I think I'd like to get back into publishing. I think things can be done better." And a week later, he called me into his office. He goes, "All right, if you'll run it, I'll pay for it."
Right, and so that became...
Come up with a name, and we'll get you an office, and away we go.
And that became Malibu Comics. And then Dave called me up, because I was still at Fantagraphics, and he said, "Hey, listen, how quickly can you get fired?"
Yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and I said, "Well, it depends on how fast you're going to start up." And so as luck would have it, I got myself fired, and so then Dave and I worked out of the original Malibu offices, and took about 5 months or 6 months of development work to try to figure out what we were going to publish and what we were going to do. And then Scott, the big black and white bust happened, and all the books started to crater before we'd even published anything. And
everybody thought we were nuts.
Right.
And I was like, if you wait until the perfect time, there's never going to be a perfect time.
Right.
The only perfect time is now. Figure it out. Figure out how to make it work.
So Scott ended up shuttering all of the other companies, and all the efforts became Malibu Comics. And then we were out in Newbury Park, where Dave lived, and that became our first office. And then we just sort of, magically we grew against sort of all odds in a down market. But it was just the two of us.
And at that first office, in 1987, in the spring of 1987, Tom and I saw an entire team picture drawn by Rob Liefeld of Youngblood 5 years before it launched at Image.
Yeah. So that began Dave's relationship with Rob Liefeld. And so that, even though we didn't publish Liefeld at the time, Dave and Liefeld became buddies. Oh, Shane Brewa has a question. Who came up with the name Malibu? Well, Dave, who would that be, I wonder?
It was me.
Who designed the original?
Go ahead.
Who designed the original logo?
That was me. I was driving back and forth to Sunrise, which was an hour commute one way in good traffic, and I was sweating out what we were gonna call the company, and so there's a bunch of criteria I had, which kind of seems silly now, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't Ultra Comics or hot comics or innovation comics. I didn't want to make promises about what the content was going to be as part of the name, because that just invites people to go, oh yeah, you think you're hot comics, you know? And it's like, no, I want a name, and then I wanted a name that kind of fixed us on the West Coast as opposed to the big publishers on the East Coast, and having it called Malibu would put us in the catalog right before Marvel, and it had the right number of letters, and it had good letters, and so everything came together, and it came to me when I drove by the Malibu Canyon exit on the 101.
And my pitch for Redondo Beach was was thrown out.
I started to say, thank goodness it could have been a totally different alternate world out there somewhere where there's a Sherman Oaks company.
That's
right.
Right. So no, that's pretty awesome. I would have loved to have been a customer in your comic shop, Dave. Like, you would have sold me everything. Like, you guys have the you guys are very awesome. I would have bought everything you said. Dave's voice is so commanding. You know,
Dave has a late night radio voice.
He does.
I have a face for radio, for sure.
I wasn't going to say that out loud because, there are people watching, but, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's very awesome. So you came up with the logo, the all of that stuff. Tom had mentioned the most important thing I ever did, though, was hiring Tom.
No,
by far.
Well, all right, sure, fine.
Tom's like, sure, let him do it. It's all good.
Because I had just gotten fired, so I needed a job. So.
How quickly can you get fired needs to be on a T-shirt.
Well, when it was just me and Tom would come out to the offices and we'd watch the during lunchtime. We'd make stuff in the microwave and we'd watch David Letterman on tape from the night before.
Yeah,
that was our lunch hour.
Because the thing about developing comics is, and this is pre-internet, because you're just sort of waiting for FedEx to show up.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of stuff where you don't know what you're going to do that day until the delivery guy shows. And we had a
Shane, we have a podcast.
We have a podcast. Where have you been?
I was going to do a plug for you. Your Geekview Tavern.
Shane Brayla is drunk on a Saturday morning.
And I got a link to it in the description down below for you.
Yay, Jarrod, you're the man. Thank you very much.
He's on top of things. Look at that. That's awesome.
All right, anyway. So what's next? Bring it on.
Okay, you had mentioned
now.
earlier. We tell us about the meeting. Did you guys had like a when Ultraverse was getting going? You guys had a meeting in, was it Arizona or
Scottsdale, Arizona? Yep.
Okay. Scottsdale. Okay. Where you guys flushed out the ideas for Ultraverse. Is that right?
Actually brought the ideas because there were no ideas there to flesh out yet. And so we had told one of the keys after we found the guys who became the original founders, we said, don't bring us the old idea. Don't bring us the thing that got rejected at DC. Don't bring us the thing that got rejected at Marvel. Don't bring us the thing that Eclipse doesn't want to do. Don't bring us your creator-owned thing that you want to bring back. Come and, keep your mind open. You could bring stuff if you want to, but really we're going to be creating in the room. We have an idea for the concept of the world itself, and you need to pitch us stuff for what you want to do and how you want to do it. And so that became... So everybody was sort of there empty.
Yeah, at the company level, we walked in with a blank slate.
Yeah, and we had ideas and we had things.
The idea was to contribute our ideas, put them all on a board, cross off the bad ones, mix them up, put them in a big mixing bowl, whatever. But the idea was to come out with something that was going to work and go in with an open mind.
Yeah, and the only real promise that we made was that we want everybody to come. We want all the 6 or 7 original founders. We want them to all come out of the weekend, each with their own book.
Right.
And so if you have something if you develop something on your own, that's great. If you throw something out to the room and it becomes, the group is helping you, if that helps you get a book, that's great. If you come up empty, in the case of, say, Gerber, then we will turn you upside down and shake you until things fall out. And so that's what we did. So those are really the only sort of promises and specifications that we had going in.
So I'm not going to say where I was able to get my hands on one, but I did happen to flip through a Bible, the Ultraverse Bible.
You rascal! How did
I
you
know,
get
right? And not all of those ideas came out at that meeting. Correct. It was just that built up over time.
That's correct.
I was shocked at the level of detail in that thing. Just the world building inside that, the framework was. I mean, I don't know if it's like that for every comic publisher, but oh my gosh, you guys.
Here's the thing, is that I don't know how many people here are fans of the Beatles or remember the Beatles, but there was a point at which when the Beatles broke up and George Harrison and Ringo Starr had all of their songs sort of rejected over the years, and suddenly they had like a backlog of 30 or 40 ideas and came out with like, a dozen albums in like 10 years of stuff because they'd had all this stuff. And so you shake Engelhart a little bit and you shake some of these creators a little bit, and they've all had stuff that they wanted to do and things they want and ways they wanted to express it and all that other stuff. And so it was really just a huge outpouring, a huge relief to sort of get some of this stuff out of their heads and into a room where they could work on it. And so they didn't necessarily bring ideas to it, but they had brought a bunch of stuff in their heads that they had always wanted to do. And Gerber especially. Gerber was, I hate it when people do this, or I always wanted to do that. And and so he was a he was a negative influence in many ways because he wanted things to be different. He was a good editor. He would take a mediocre idea and turn it into a good idea. Right. And the other great thing is that some of those guys have been in comics for so long that they would say, no, Marvel did that in 1967, or DC did that in an issue of Brave and the Bold. And so you could immediately discard some ideas quickly without a lot of discussion because you had sort of historical memory in the room that could tell you, stay away.
One of the things when I came out to WonderCon last year and got to hang out with you guys and meet you in person, there was something I wasn't aware of, and I thought I knew a lot about Ultraverse, but I find I'm still learning new stuff about Malibu and stuff every day. There was the mention of, and I apologize, I don't recall who it was, but was there a movie, a popular movie director or something involved with the creation of, or the
Wes Craven.
Wes Craven, that's who it was.
Yeah, the guy that directed Scream, right?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so it was Wes Craven.
Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street was Craven. Yeah.
But why was he there? Did he come up with an idea too, or?
Dave and I used to party with him at Studio 54 back in the day, and so.
Sometimes I feel dumb for asking questions, but really, I'm curious about that.
So here's the thing, is that we shared Malibu Comics, and Wes Craven had the same agent.
Okay.
A woman named Irene somebody who was at International Creative Management, ICM, and Scott was always on the phone. I think Dave can attest this. Scott was always on the phone. And he was always trying to work a deal, always trying to work an angle, always trying to get a project going, always trying to get something. And he would have regular conversations with Irene about, what can we do to have some of these things made into movies that we're doing. And then when the Ultraverse started germinating as a real idea, somebody in the office said, well, we really need like a great villain in the Ultraverse because everybody remembers Ra's al Ghul from Batman. Everybody remembers Doctor Doom from Marvel. Everybody remembers Thanos. Everybody remembers all these guys. And your heroes are only as good as your villain is great. And so Scott asked Irene for the roster of, people that she represented and who might be interested in coming aboard the Ultraverse. And one of the names was Wes Craven. And then somebody, I'm certain it wasn't me. It could have been Scott. It could have been Chris. It could have even been Dave who saw the name Wes Craven and thought, well, that guy has a reputation of creating villains. Everybody remembers Freddy Krueger, and so we're not going to get John Carpenter. We're not going to get those. But what about Wes Craven? So we called up. When I say we, it's not me. It's Scott. Scott called up. Scott called up Wes Craven.
Not me either.
Right. But the collective we all agreed to go after Wes Craven. Scott made the arrangements to call Wes Craven. Wes Craven was totally on board. He loved the idea of being a part of it. He sent us some quotes to use for a press release to announce his coming in. I think I've got the quotes somewhere on file. And I booked his flight to go to Arizona and join the group, and he was on board. And then like 2 days, 3 days before everybody was supposed to meet, his assistant called up and said, Mr. Craven has to bow out. His movie just got greenlit. He's got to go.
Yep.
And so it's sort of the lost piece of the Ultraverse. What would the Ultraverse have looked like if Wes Craven had come in and done something? And ideally he probably was not going to write a book. The best case scenario would be he would sort of be in a meeting, throw out a bunch of ideas, and then we would go back and forth and sort of repitch his concept to him as a comic book or whatever. But I think it would have been awesome for any involvement from him.
Yeah, and speaking as a publicity hound, having him contribute made any legit mentions in Entertainment Weekly and People Magazine more legit.
Right. Sure. Yeah, because he had his own publicity team, and his name and he still had a strong name, and so that would have gotten a lot more publicity than we were already bargaining for. So his PR value and his creative value were fairly equal, and both had a high level.
Yeah, because ultimately a publisher's job is just to sell as many copies profitably as you can. Because you got to keep the doors open, and ultimately you're representing the creators, and you want to send them the biggest check that you can.
And you may not have realized this from looking at the work we do, but we love PR, and we love, we love. There's nothing better than getting the word out, and so I think that's something that we live for. It's somebody, and if you can find somebody who can help you get the word out and can also deliver on the creative, best of both worlds.
Yeah, you can't hide I've said this a million times. You can't hide your light under a bushel basket, right?
You try though.
I do. Yeah, it's funny if you think I would live by my own words, right? Know your numbers? Oh no. Not for me personally, but at a business level, sure. Should I hide my stuff under a candle? No, not publicly, but personally, I guess I'm going to do that. Yeah,
you're the dumbest smart guy I know.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to throw those out to you. I don't know if there's an answer for them, but I'll throw them out anyway. Someone wants to know how many Ultraverse Bibles exist.
Go tell it, because we just ran them off the copier. And I think you can probably find one on the internet if you look hard enough.
So how many?
And if you can't, we should all get together and figure out a website to put it on so everybody has access to it. I think that's a great idea.
So here's the thing: when he says how many of them exist, does he mean the physical copies of it, or how many versions were done over the years?
That's true.
Because the original Ultraverse Bible started at Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's about 40 pages. And it's basically sort of a disorganized mess of everybody's ideas and everybody's stuff. And then it evolved as a sort of organic document, so that by the time I left, the Bible was well over 400 pages.
Right.
Wow. And
the trick with the Bible is what's the date on it?
Right. Yeah. And so we would have, it got to a point where we had half a guy in the office, Steve Lowry, and it was his job to update the Bible all the time. So new pages would come in, and he'd put the character designs in, he'd put pages in, he'd put new text about the characters in, and it was his job, in addition to all of his other jobs, to sort of keep that up, because it's a busy job just to sort of manage the document.
That guy worked so hard, Tommy.
And then because there are no PDFs back in the day, if you got a new creator on, like if Barry Windsor Smith shows up or somebody else shows up, whatever, you got to send them the Bible. So you have to make a 400-page copy thing, put it in a notebook, ship it out in FedEx, and say, well, here you go. Now familiarize yourself with what everybody else has been doing for the last 2 years.
So it was very much a living document. It was very
absolutely.
much
sure.
Yeah. It was the equivalent of a Word document that everyone could edit.
Yep.
Right. And if you had an old version of the Bible, chances are you were out of touch, because those characters had evolved and changed over time. And one of the things that we tried to do in the Bible is, certainly in the earlier versions, when you see the character name, you will see the genesis of the creators who worked on it or created it. So there'd be like 2 or 3 different creators' names associated with certain characters, because everybody was sort of pitching in and contributing. But it was also clear that if you were contributing a significant amount to a character, you had to get your piece of that character.
Yeah, I found the
So-
section on the God Wheel fascinating.
I had nothing to do with that.
That there-
Neither.
That's
it was
all
interesting.
editorial.
Yeah, it was interesting. Another question that someone asks, it says, was it in the back of your mind what Atlas had done in the 70s to rival Marvel and DC at the time as far as who was brought along and part of the creative team?
No,
Not at all.
no, Atlas
Look.
never crossed our minds, actually.
So we did.
We had so many other people we had to compete with, and there were so many other good examples. What Dean did at Eclipse, what those guys did at First Comics, you know, to a lesser degree, what Kamiko did. All those people we had to compete with all of those people and all of those companies, and a lot of them did very, very well. And and almost all of them were there before we were, so we were always swimming upstream.
And we were also competing with Image, which we had helped create.
Right?
So
Yeah.
So it was really just like stepping into the ring, and just getting ready to sort of box your way out. And so we weren't really looking to the past, except, I mean, we had this discussion in the office a lot of looking at the past comic book companies that had come and gone, and mostly trying to figure out why they failed. And so why did Tower Comics fail? Why did Atlas Seaboard fail? Why did First eventually fail? Why did Eclipse eventually fail? And try to figure out why they did and what mistakes they made, so that when those same opportunities came up with us, we could just say, oh no, that's what killed Eclipse. Oh no, that's what killed Kamiko. Oh no, that's what killed First. So we tried to use those examples as a way to avoid disaster if we could.
What's your corporate philosophy, Mr. Mason? Don't step in that cow pie, Mr. Olbrich.
Right. Yeah, because it's there are many wounds that can be inflicted upon you by the market or by the audience or whatever, but there are also many self-inflicted wounds that you can do to yourself. And if you can avoid the self-inflicted wounds, you're better prepared for the longer haul.
That's right.
Anytime I talk to you guys, there's always a lot of energy. I feel a lot of energy. Was it like that in the office, in the Malibu office
Yes.
back in the day?
It was this, but turned up to like 10. I mean,
Right.
or 11 or 12. I mean, it was ferocious in our office. And because we had not just the two of us, but Chris, we had Dan Danko, we had Roland, we had Hank Canals, we had Mark Panicia, who had a super long career. Is he still at Marvel? I think he's still at Marvel, right?
He's one of the senior guys now.
Right, yeah. So we had this amazing roster of people, and like Scott was pointing out, nobody left. And after Malibu was done, even people have gone on to other careers. They all come back afterwards and say that's the best job I ever had.
Yeah, because we had,
and that's one of the things I'm proudest of is that I was able to contribute positively to the lives of all those people.
Oh, I
mean, at one point, Tom, how many people do we have? Almost 200?
It's 150 people in 2 countries.
Right.
Wow.
And so because we had a partial video game studio in England or Scotland, or I forget where it is. Yeah, but I don't care about any of that, Dave. That sort of fatherly thing that you love. My children, they've come home to me. Please, they nestle against my bosom and see me at Christmas. I don't give a crap about that.
Don't believe any of that baloney.
Oh, man.
No, but the thing is that we didn't, because we were in our 20s or whatever, and none of us had really worked in a massive corporate office before. We didn't have the sort of rules to follow that big corporations have. Well, if you want to talk to somebody, you have to go through this person to go to that person. You have to write a memo, or you have to do this or that. It's like, no, there's Tom. He's walking down the hall. Grab him. There's Dave. He's walking down the hall. Just yell at him. Hey, Dave, what about this? And so there's no regard for these sort of weird corporate rules that some businesses have. It's like, if you want to talk to Tom, if you want to talk to Dave, you want to talk to Chris, or whatever, you've got something you want to say, there they are.
So you guys were like Google of the 90s.
Yeah, but we were, it was not, I would
not couches
probably
and
the
stuff.
worst.
I would probably not like couches and hanging out.
We were less conscious of the culture. We were doing the culture organically to please ourselves.
Right.
This is the kind of place where we want to work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do it too? And if they said yes, then we'd pay them and they'd stay.
Right. But also the kind of thing is this, if Scott is ostensibly the president of the company, so at a certain point he should be like the leader or the representative or whatever. But if he walked through the office and I yelled out across several cubicles, "Scott, what the hell's going on with that shirt you're wearing?" Well, that sends a message to the staff that these sort of rules about corporate behavior are generally out the window. If Tom can make fun of Scott's shirt as he's walking through the office, then it's a lot looser than you would expect it to be. And a number of people, like from the coloring department, all came from the same college. We had recruited out of the art department. Then they all knew each other even before they got to Malibu. So they
were recruiting each other. They were recruiting each other too. They were recruiting their friends. Yeah.
So they brought their friendly culture into the coloring department as well. And so it was just a sort of big group of weirdos.
And that's stuff you could ask Kurtis, because he's probably got a better perspective from the bottom up than we do from the top down.
I'm anxious.
You got to ask Kurtis. You got to ask Kurtis to tell you in detail how he got his job.
Oh, I plan on it for sure. I actually thought of that after when I looked at the schedule and went, we have the upper echelon of Malibu, followed by someone coming in as an intern, right?
Yep.
Yes.
The company. Yeah. So
working his way up, and basically refusing to take no for an answer and refusing to go home.
Yeah. That's going to be that.
But I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, you got to ask him. It's a great story.
It's okay. I'm gonna ask a question now that no one else asked, but I'll throw it out there. But this is to Dave. So, Dave, when looking up some of the research, and we're talking about the image guys and stuff. One of the things I noticed was Wikipedia, which, as everyone knows, is right all the time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
They mentioned.
Apparently, I'm 3 years younger than my mom thought I was.
There you go. So. Yeah, you look great. You look great for 28, by the way. That's great.
That's right.
Right. It mentions that you had lunch with Liefeld and Valentino and Larson. Was this was before they had left Marvel? Is that right?
The reasons Tommy's laughing is I have no memory of that particular lunch.
Really?
Yeah.
None at all.
No.
I mean,
I just want to know what you ordered.
I'm sure it was a tuna melt, right, Tom? Either tuna melt or pulled pork.
Tuna melt or pulled pork.
Yeah, it was either tuna melt or pulled pork sandwich for sure.
Oh my gosh!
You can clock this. If you go to a restaurant with Dave, and he's looking down the menu, the first thing he will say is, "Ooh, that pulled pork sandwich looks good." that's it. And anything else on the menu is off limits. Like,
I find that interesting because I'm like, did those guys plan on leaving Marvel already, or did Dave plant the seed in their head, like while he's eating a salad, saying,
"No,
you guys really need to go"?
We already had Liefeld.
Yeah,
we were doing the art of Rob Extreme, the art of Rob Liefeld. The word extreme tied to Rob Liefeld is my fault. He was looking for a name for the book for the art of Rob Liefeld. I was the one that came up with extreme.
Well, I don't know why you would say it's your fault. You could just say it's your idea.
Oh, I see. Well, it was my idea. So anyway, we were already working with Rob, and we were already advertised. We used our advertising buy in the buyer's guide to put in that Exterminators ad, that full-page Exterminators ad.
Right.
So we were already working with Rob, and Rob was already leaving and already wanting to do all these things. But at night, when we were all sleeping and stuff, he was on the phone with Eric and with Valentino and with McFarlane, talking about maybe trying to figure out a way that they all could leave. And that's what led to the December call from Rob, which said, "Dave, we're going to do something. If you want to be a part of it, you have to be in New York this weekend."
Right.
And that's when we met them at Mickey Mantle's, and they told us they were going to go quit Marvel in DC, even though they weren't working for DC.
Yeah, because they had gone. I mean, they tell the story a lot better, but they had gone back to Marvel. Hi, Kurtis.
Hey, Kurtis.
Hey, guys. Talking about you. They had gone back to Terry Stewart, and they had said, "Well, because in essence they didn't necessarily really want to leave because it's scary out there, but they really wanted to get a better deal from Terry Stewart, and Terry Stewart made it difficult for them to not leave because he wasn't gonna. At some point he made that famous or infamous speech about how the characters are more important than the creators, and I'm not going to give up any of my company's equity or percentage to help you guys out. And that's when Todd really just said, no, we're out of here, we're gone. And so, but again, that's a story that they tell much better, because they were actually in the room with Terry and I was not. So
I feel like we should have planned an 8-hour live stream. I think it's really interesting. And I've said this before to some of the other people in the other interview. Like the story of Malibu and Ultraverse badly needs to be told in a documentary or a book, like something.
What?
Yeah. Right.
How funny you should say that.
Yeah. Oh, tell us what's going on.
No, I'm not going to tell you. Not yet.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on. All right. Well, we'll save that for the next live stream.
That's right.
I do have a question for Dave.
Yeah.
What kind of sauce on your pulled pork?
I don't care. I'll go completely naked. I will go with Kansas City. I'll go with Santa Maria. I'm easy when it comes to barbecue sauce. I like a tiny bit of slaw.
I like barbecue too.
Either slaw. Yeah, well, I haven't missed any meals. Trust me. I like a little bit of slaw, and I like a little bit of shaved onions.
We know Dave's easy going because we had the conversation that only one of us would be wearing pants during this live stream. So,
not me.
Oh, there you go.
Welcome to Ultra Food.
It's a little brisk in here, guys. Anyway,
also a little brisket in here.
No, it's awesome.
Nice. Hey, look what Tom did, brisket.
No, do you guys look at the time? Do you anything you guys want to plug? You guys got anything going on? Like what's going on? Geekview Tavern podcast. We've got that going on that you're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anything. Well, Tom is the internet. He's the live stream internet boy because he's on every episode of Geekview Tavern, and that's the only thing that I really do in comics anymore. But I've got 27 episodes up on the site, so everybody should go to Geekview Tavern and subscribe and hit the like button and do all that nonsense. But Tom also appears like every Sunday as part of Roland's Silverline stream. So
that's right. I'm on Roland's stream.
He's yattering on the internets all the time.
Yeah. So if this appearance hasn't been too annoying for you and you would like more of me, I'm every Sunday at 5:00. And and I've got a comic coming out this year from Silverline, from Roland's group, that's illustrated by Henry Martinez.
Nice.
And I haven't gotten permission from Roland to mention my own comic. So
there you go. Henry Martinez.
I don't want to eat too much into Kurtis's time, but I do want to tell one quick story because there's a bunch of people here, I think, that have maybe not heard all the stories yet. And so when we were trying to decide who was going to draw the books, we'd already kind of decided that we really, really, really liked Prime, and we really, really, given the concept, we really had to find the right artist to draw it. And while we were in that discussion, we found out that Alan Davis's exclusive with Marvel had expired. And they immediately put me on a plane to go to a convention in England to seduce Alan Davis into drawing Prime for us.
Well, you had the legs for it.
Yeah, I know. I'll do a lot for a set of nylons. So we went over there, and he told me, "I'm sorry, I can't work on that book. I'm retired from comics. I'm only going to work on my son's Boy Scout troop. I'm not going to do comics anymore. I'm completely retiring." And so that's where we found Norm. And now I can't imagine Norm without, right? I can't imagine Prime without Norm. Like, Norm was absolutely 100% the right choice, but it was almost Alan Davis. So there you go.
Norm's artwork is kind of what drew me to like Prime, just the dynamic feel of his art.
Absolutely.
I just loved every bit of it.
That's another thing, because you look at him, because he was doing Batman before that, and you look at his Batman work and you go, well, that's a great, talented guy. But then when you free him from the restraints of DC's corporate comics, suddenly Prime is like, there you go. Suddenly Prime is like, it's like Norm all amped up.
And Norm put so much thought into how that was going to work and how he was going to make it work, and those pages are just so unbelievably well constructed.
There's so much energy in each panel.
Yep. Yeah. And he had this this weird way of working, and I think if Kurtis had seen his originals, Kurtis can explain it better than I can. But dude,
Well,
so
his thumbs.
Yeah,
He did these really beautiful loose thumbnails that used to come in the office via fax, you know. And then I think he always wanted to keep the energy of the poses, so he would blow those up and then kind of use that as the template instead of like just redrawing it, if I remember correctly. But those thumbnails were gorgeous, just gorgeous thumbnails.
and he wanted
to ink his own work. That was part of his problem with DC, is that he couldn't ink his own work. And so the reason he could produce Prime on deadline, penciling and inking, was he didn't do full pencils. He did those beautiful roughs that Kurtis talked about, and then he went straight to inks. So he was inking these incredibly rough layouts.
But it's the inking is so dynamic on that.
Yeah, and that's all Norm. Norm did all
of his energy comes from the inks. So that way he didn't over tighten the pencils, so he didn't take away the energy.
That cover totally sold the book for me. Sold a lot of copies of Prime.
And that's not even the best Prime cover that I think there we go.
Oh, there you go.
It's the most used. It's also in the stand up. Hey, are we cutting into Kurtis's time yet? Because I feel good about it.
Fine. I'm fine.
No, hey, go ahead.
We should leave and let Kurtis chat, shouldn't we?
We should see if Kurtis is willing to throw us under the bus while we're still on the
No. Kurtis should have the freedom. He should have the freedom to complain once we're gone.
That's true. I promise not to watch, Kurtis. You feel free to drive right over me if you need to.
Kurtis, they said that this was going to be a real rags to riches story.
Tell these boys the truth.
Because here's the thing: if you had and again, Kurtis will clear up all misconceptions that I'm about to lay out. But Kurtis started as like a kid at the Malibu offices, and he's making his own comics now, and so that is. I can't necessarily take the credit or blame for that because Kurtis already loved.
Oh, there it is.
Started.
Look.
But
Stephen Boyd's got it.
That's right. Gifted from Kurtis himself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go watch the Wild Wild West this morning.
Gentlemen,
you can say goodbye to me, and then Kurtis can take over.
Tom, Dave, you guys are awesome as always. Pleasure talking with you. Thanks for joining us on the live stream today.
Thank you so much.
You should do this again.
We definitely will for sure. It's been a lot of fun.
I have nothing to do, and I have tons of stories.
Well, and now
if you'd like, we can make a recording available to you too. If you want to,
I would love that.
I would love a recording
because
of it.
When I finish my Ultraverse history book, I will be quoting from this.
Nice.
Man, that's
why are you shaking your head, Dave?
Unbelievable.
Why are you shaking your head, Dave?
I'm not going to talk about it. Oh wait, I'm going to talk about it.
I'm
You're such a tease.
I'm teasing it. Well, I did. They should have sent me to get Alan Davis.
They should have.
But no. Listen, we should send Dave. Dave knows how to get Alan Davis.
You'd look better in the stockings than I did, for sure.
Oh, don't I know it?
Oh man, we should. Do you want to play the next bumper, Stephen, or are you saving that for the next one to move us?
I'll go ahead and hit that next bumper.
Yeah, do you have that one queued up? All right, go ahead and play that.
See you, boys.
My name's Ross Ritchie, and I'm the founder and chairman of Boom Studios. And back in the 1990s, I worked for Malibu Comics as a marketing manager on the Ultraverse, and you're watching the ULTRACON live stream.
Ooh, how cool is that? That's pretty awesome, right? We are joined now by a gentleman who needs no introduction. I'm going to give him one anyway. It's probably going to be terrible. Kurtis Fujita. Am I pronouncing your last name right? Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciative. This is Stephen, my co-host. Stephen is the gentleman who makes those awesome custom Ultraverse action figures in our group.
They look great. I've been watching them and they look amazing. So great.
Well, thank you so much. I got choice on the next song.
Nice.
I got a recipe down. I just need to start working on start prepping it up and get painted.
That looks great. Very cool.
So Kurtis, as Dave and Tom were mentioning, is publishing his own comic now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're gonna go back now and look at. We've talked to the kind of the high guys at. When I say I don't mean high guys, the upper echelon of the officers and the creators of the company. Now we're going to get down to the you're I hesitate to say the little guy, but
Yeah.
the guy who came in from the bottom and worked his way up.
Thank you.
And I was hoping you will tell us a little bit about how you became an intern at the company
Sure.
and your journey, and we'll kind of go from there, Kurtis.
Sure. Yeah. So name's Kurtis Fujita. I at Malibu I was a color designer and then also the editorial assistant to Roland Mann. But I started out as an intern, and all this was during my high school years. So I went from Yeah. So it was really fortunate. So I really got a nice exposure to the industry and really had a great time at Malibu.
I was just reading the books in the high school, and you get to work on them.
I know it was like a fan's dream, you know.
So you were in high school when you started.
Yeah. All my entire time I was in high school, and they were nothing but the best people. And towards the end, I mean, I was coloring, some of the Ultraverse books, and I was going to conventions in Chicago with the guys and stuff like that. So it was a blast. I mean, like Dave said, best job ever. Really.
Scott mentioned that there was a book that people could pick up and take and get autographs at the conventions. It was like a convention signing book. Your picture's in there. How old are you in the picture?
Maybe 15 at the time. 15.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So it was great. And the way it got started is I started out as a fan. I've been reading comic books for years already. And my dad, my dad and mom are divorced, but I'm originally from Hawaii. So I was living in California with my mom. My dad was coming out to visit me, and it was my birthday. And so he heard about this. Was just when Youngblood got announced by Malibu. So my dad wrote Scott Rosenberg a letter. This is all pre-internet, and just sent tons of chocolate macadamia nut candies from Hawaii in boxes and boxes to Malibu and said, "Hey, my kid loves comic books. He would love to take a look." Oh yeah, we have stories. We have stories about that. And Scott Rosenberg said, "Yeah, sure, come on down." So we went to the office. It wasn't far from where I live, maybe 10-15 minutes, and met Chris Ulm. Chris Ulm was there, and Chris Ulm took us on a tour. Yeah. Well, my grades kind of reflect that, David. But So we went ahead and had the tour. Chris Ulm went ahead and gave a bunch of comics to me. Got to meet the staff, and then sent me on my way. And about a week or so later, I was having dinner at home, and my mom and my stepdad were talking to me, and they were like, "Hey, you should try and get an internship." So what is that? They said, "Well, you just offer to do stuff for free, so you can get experience." So I said, "All right." So I was, I think, 14. I couldn't even drive yet. So my mom drove me to the Malibu offices, right, on a whim. And it was in this industrial park at the time, and just dropped me off because she wasn't going to wait for me. So I went inside the office and went to the receptionist, and I asked her, I said, I'd like to speak to Chris Ulm. Not knowing what this looked like, that there's this 14-year-old kid wanting to talk to one of the heads of a company. And she says, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I want to offer my services. I'd like to be an intern and work for free." And she wasn't having it. And I kept pushing. And so she finally got so fed up, she picked up her phone and she pretended she was on the intercom. She didn't even dial anything. And she just yelled. She goes, "Does anybody want free work in the office?" And then hung up and said, "Nobody wants you here. You should leave." So I was dejected. So I walked to the parking lot. I couldn't leave because I have to wait for my mom to pick me up. So I just had to sit there and wait. And I'm sitting there, these little benches in front of the office. And I'll never forget, it was a turquoise blue Saab, and it was Chris Ulm driving the car. And I saw him driving through the parking lot. And I was never really an aggressive person, but fire just got lit in me. And I stood up and I chased his car through the parking lot on foot to his parking space. And he opened the door and looked a little startled, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I just rattled off in one sentence. I said, "I'm Kurtis Fujita. I met you last week. You gave me a tour." I said, "I really want to work in comic books. I'll do anything. I'll clean toilets, whatever. I'll do it for free. Just let me work in comic books." And he says, "Yeah, you're hired." So he walked me in immediately into the office, past the receptionist who was staring daggers at me, and said, "This is Kurtis, our new intern. He starts work next week." And then walked me into the office, introduced me to the staff, and I was off to the races. So that's how it started. Yeah.
So the rule of thumb here is, if anybody wants to become an intern at a company, 1, bypass the receptionist.
Exactly.
2, agree to do it for free. And 3, say, "I'll clean the toilet."
exactly.
And chocolate macadamia
A
nuts.
chocolate macadamia that doesn't hurt either. And
Right.
To their credit, I mean, I was only an intern for maybe like a month or so before they actually bumped me up to editorial assistant, and Roland Mann came in and I started working under him. And so they really invested in me, I would say. They really made good on everything. So it was great experience.
You were, so at a young age, the fact that you wanted to get into, or your mom suggested that you become an intern and stuff, you were a fan of comics then, correct?
Yeah.
And what were you reading as a kid? I'm just genuinely curious.
Sure. I mean, like definitely X-Men, Punisher, Wolverine, a lot of the Marvel stuff, Batman, was a big fan of the Image guys, and so that whole paradigm shift when Image started was like crazy,
Sure.
So that was what was really exciting. But yeah, definitely, I think I would say probably the most prominent when I first came in reading was Paul Smith and Chris Claremont's run on X-Men. That was like the first.
Oh man,
I got into,
good stuff.
Oh,
good book to cut your teeth on, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you get in. Chris Ulm gives you the internship, and you start working for them, and they start giving you stuff to do. And you said you worked in coloring. You were colorist.
Yeah, so that was towards the tail end. During the bulk of the time, I was the editorial assistant for Roland Mann. So Roland, writer, but also editor at Malibu, and so I was his assistant. So I would be basically have my hands in everything, from making copies of the artwork. Roland would have me doing balloon guides, like helping decide where the word balloons go. Sometimes making phone calls to some of the artists, getting their invoices ready, shipping things. But it was great because being in that position, it was like an apprenticeship. Really learned the craft of comic book making because there were so many. I basically be running from department to department, interacting with everybody. And as Dave and Tom kind of said, everybody was completely open. I mean, I would, as somebody who was on the lower rung, I mean, I would interact with Scott Rosenberg on a fairly regular basis. I mean, I could just see him in the hallway, talk to him. If I wanted to talk to him, I could just walk to his office and knock on the door and say, "Hey, can I talk to you now?" I mean, it was they were so open. It was amazing.
Yeah, Scott was very. When I met him in California last year, he was bragging on you a lot. So he really liked you a lot. Yeah. So he's that's pretty cool. Someone was asking in the chat. They want to know what the secretary said when you got the job. She clearly did not. She shot ugly look at you, I'm sure.
Probably. Yeah, she said everything with her eyes, but nothing verbally. That's
right. And then another guy in the chat is asking, Kurtis, since you started in editorial, were you drawn to that? Did you want to concentrate on writing or art?
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, I love the art. I was an aspiring comic book artist, but it was kind of like I kind of got where I got in where I could. And so it was editorial, because my art wasn't really up there at the time. So, thanks, Dave. Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah. No, it was so it was editorial. I mean, I really aspired to be in the art thing. And towards the end, I was able to parlay that interest into doing the coloring. And I was doing what was called color designs, which they don't do anymore, which is you would have one person manually color with pens on black and white Xeroxes of the artwork and determine the overall coloring look. And then that was handed to teams of people on Photoshop who would take that as a blueprint and kind of execute that kind of thing. But but editorial was, I would say, if you really want to be good at understanding comic books as a creative enterprise, being in editorial is the best place because you get to understand how everything interacts with each other. And I think I'm better off actually having gone through that route or started out with that route.
So you're a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
You're rolling. You're walking the halls of school, maybe whatever. Are you like, yeah, I work for a comic company? I mean, because I like to think I'm humble, but man, I would tell everybody because I was such a comic book geek. I mean, did that ever cross your mind a lot? Like, man, I'm working for Malibu Comics. Like,
oh yeah, big time. But I mean, you got to remember this is the early to mid '90s, right? So the stock that has in high school isn't what it would be now.
Right.
I'm middle age, so it's like, we're at the point now where we can all look back and go, I remember when I was in the dark days of comic books where it wasn't the cool thing, right? You didn't want to always fly that flag. So yeah, I felt that way inside. I don't know if the reception was the same.
I guess that's true. The perception was, I guess, 30 years ago when I was a kid that my mom always said that comic shops seemed to have so many posters in because they didn't want people looking into the shop. It was like, but when you go in, whether you were 20 or whether you were 40 or whatever, you all spoke the same language. So it was almost like its own thing. But nowadays we're the alpha males, right? Like it's cool to be in comics and everything. So
I remember one of the experiences getting to go to the comic book shop is getting to talk to fellow collectors and actually just geek out and talking about stories and what's going on in the books. And Ultraverse was a big topic at the time too. And like my buddy Brian I grew up with, he's in the chat. It's like we were riding around buying the books, going to Pizza Hut and running around my mom's old Buick and and you were working on Malibu Comics.
Well, I mean, I was a fan, that was the best part, is I was still a fan. And so, and I wouldn't mind doing any tasking. I mean, we used to have these things called photostat machines where you would take, because scanning wasn't that great yet. So you go into this development room with film and like you get this machine, you'd put original artwork on it. It would actually suck it with a vacuum onto it. And you have to take photos and then develop it with film. So I would be in a dark room developing film for all the artwork. And nobody really wanted to do the job. But for me, I mean, I'm handling Norm Brayfogel's pencils and inks and Howard Chaykin's things and all this stuff. I'm giving handed this original work. I love to be in that dark room developing artwork. It was amazing. So yeah, it was a great time, definitely.
What's one of your best memories working in the office?
Oh gosh, I mean, I would say there's so many. I would say. And this is a testament to Scott Rosenberg, right? I mean, I still remember there's so many. It was like going to Disneyland every day. So there's so many, but one that I remember distinctly is when Marvel bought Malibu. Stan Lee came for a tour of the offices, and so Stan Lee's walking through the office, and I'm in the hallway at the same time, and I see Stan Lee. We had this big. I think it was Boris Vallejo did a painting of Ariel from Strangers. And it was in the hallway, this big one. And Scott Rosenberg is taking Stan Lee through the office. And you can just hear his voice. You know that voice, right? That brassy voice coming through the hallway. And he stops in the hallway, looking at you. Who's that? And Scott's explaining everything and this. And then Scott looks over at me and he goes, "Oh, hey, Kurtis, this is Stan Lee." And so in the middle of this tour, so he goes and introduces me to Stan Lee, and then you get to hear Stan Lee say your name. "Oh, hi, Kurtis." And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a dream come true. And he's in the middle of taking Stan Lee on a tour through Malibu Comics, and he goes, "Hey, Kurtis, have you ever got one of Stan's autographs?" I go, "No." He goes, let me see. He has his assistant look through a bunch of comic books in the back and finds an issue of Fantastic Four, has them come out, and has Stan Lee signed it for me right then and there during a business meeting. I mean, how cool is that? And that's the head of the company. And I'm way on the lowest rung, and he's taking time in the middle of his business appointment to let me meet Stan Lee and even get me a collector's item from him. I mean, that was the job, and that's why you can't beat it. It was amazing. Just absolutely.
One of the things that I really have come to appreciate about knowing people in the industry and getting to be what little part of it I've been is the fostering of knowing that there's another generation coming into the industry, and that needs to be applauded and fostered and taken care of, right? Because we're always not going to be around anymore. I remember at a convention, I think it was New York Comic-Con, I was standing in line waiting to get Walt Simonson's signature, and there was a bunch of people standing around, and Walt hadn't came back to his table yet. I never forgot this. I'll just take a second to tell the story anyway. And Walt ran back to his table just for a second, and he said, "Hey, everybody." He said, "I'm sorry, I'm running a little late for a panel. I'm not going to be able to do signings right now, so you guys are going to have to come back in a couple hours, and I'll do signings." Well, there was a kid standing there. There was a bunch of adults standing there with a stack of books or whatever, but there was one kid standing there with a book waiting to get signed. And Walt says, "Except for you, you can come up." Wow. So Yeah, called the kid up, signed his book for him. Kid was thrilled. Like I never forgot that either. So I've met my share of, jerks in the business, so to speak.
Sure.
But the majority, almost everyone has been, it's welcoming. It's a community, it's a family. We all have a part to play in the whole thing. So that's super cool. I think it's fascinating that you just got to meet Stan Lee in such a way, and he took that effort to come out, and that clearly made an impression on you.
Definitely. And I think that's the common thing about longevity in anything, but especially in comic books. There's people that like the idea. I like the idea of being a comic book artist. So I like the idea of being a comic book writer. Nobody lasts unless they actually love the craft and the art. It's not an industry for the meek or people who don't have strong will. And so there's a certain level of respect with everybody across the board that if you have been in the industry, whether it's fandom or the creative side, and you've stayed in it, you have a certain type of grit and a certain type of tenacity, and there's a mutual respect, because it's not a place for fair weather friends, the fandom or the creative side, and that's why, I mean, to throw it back to you guys, that's why I think that the whole everything you guys are doing to help promote the Ultraverse, I mean, it's amazing. All of us worked on this how many decades ago. We still have a warm place in our heart for it, because of our experience, and it's just so great to see that conveyed and keeping it going now. It's really special, and for all of us that were involved, it's amazing. So
we appreciate that. For me, I can't speak for Steven, but for me, it was just a matter of finding like-minded people who enjoyed what I did. Now, 10 years later, being part of the group, I mean, we've got founders in there, creators, writers, artists. It's
an amazing experience to get to talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You were there.
I'm just really appreciative that for all the stuff that you guys did over the years. I mean, you did sparking the imagination, putting books in people's hands. I mean, just comics in general are just awesome. And it is, like you said, it's a grind. It's a thankless push. Get it in people's faces. Don't care how you get it in people's faces. Thinking outside the box, convention. It's just a whole thing you got to do to get the word out about, projects that you're working on.
Definitely.
But you have a project
Yes,
that
I do.
you nice little segue here.
Sure.
You have this very, very cool book.
Thank you.
It's called am I saying, when I say, is it Sifu? What is that?
It's a Sifu. Sifu is a term for a martial arts, a kung fu instructor.
Right. It's it's Kurtis Fujita's Shadow Ghost.
I'm gonna give you a full screen layout so you can show the book.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
There it is.
Very good. Tell us about the book.
Sure. So after Malibu, I ended up working in video games and doing art there and going off to art college and all that. But from the decades from then to now, I became a kung fu instructor. So I've trained kung fu for for about maybe like almost 30 years, and that's been a while. So I've been doing that for a long time, and then I eventually got out of doing art and became a full kung fu instructor. So I had my own school and things like that, and that's why that term Sifu is the word for instructor. And so at some point, I really wanted to kind of combine my passion for the kung fu martial art and comic books. And so I went ahead. Oh, thanks, David. And I put the two together, and so that's what Shadow Ghost is. Really, what it boils down to is kung fu as a martial art is kind of obscure nowadays, in terms of popularity and things like that. And I care so much for it, and I wanted other people to experience what I experienced in it. The lessons, the philosophy, and all the excitement and all that. And so I had the whole skill set of art and everything that I learned at Malibu. And so I put the two together and have the book. And the book's out. The first issue is out now. We successfully crowdfunded, and you can go ahead and buy it online. It's at theshadowghost.com. And I'm working on issue 2 currently. And and then just a couple months back, some people in the entertainment expressed interest in adapting it to potentially a TV or film adaptation. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So we signed with them. They're called Atchity Productions. They're the people behind the Meg films with Jason Statham, and so we have that going on the side too, trying to get things moving on.
That's fantastic. And you've only released one issue too.
I know. I was talking to my lawyer, and he was when we were kind of going over things. He goes, "You do realize this is strange, right?" He goes, "You only have one issue out." I said, "Yeah, I do realize it, but
yeah, but some people don't even get one issue published. They just have an idea. They say they're going to publish it, and they got a movie deal or something out of it. So it's pretty awesome still. What I like about
thank you
is that it's a comic book clearly, but it's like also an instructional guide kind of. You're teaching a philosophy and a style in the book too. You've found a way to translate what you love, your one passion, into a 4-color comic. And it's pretty sweet.
Thank you. Yeah, and name withheld, that's switch style. The predominant style is Hongga, Hongakyun, or Hongar Kung Fu. So if you've seen a lot of Kung Fu movies, like there's a series called Drunken Master with Jackie Chan, and another one called Once Upon a Time in China. That's based on a real life martial artist, and that's whose style it is. And and the goal is I think this is kind of the cool thing about Kung Fu and martial arts in general, is you kind of thank you, David. You kind of learn. You achieve your ability over time. Comic books, I love that. I loved in comic books how characters have superpowers and things like that. In martial arts, you have superpowers, but they're built up over a long period of time. So when you read the comic book, you're actually learning martial arts along with the character as he builds up and becomes the hero, from the very basics up to the advanced levels. And the fun part is at the back of every issue, you can scan, there's a QR code, and it goes to a video of me teaching you the Kung Fu techniques that were in that issue. So it kind of has this meta quality to it. So yeah.
That's really cool.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
That's pretty sweet. I need to do that. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There was a couple questions in the chat real quick. And let me see if I can find them. Here's one. Someone wants to know if you got to keep any artwork.
Okay.
From Malibu.
Sure. If I did, I wouldn't say, but no, I'd say so I have the original colors that I did in pen from all the different issues, like Prime, and there's a Spider-Man Ultra Force I did the colors for. I have that. As far as the actual other artwork, I don't have that, but I was a collector. I mean, they kind of let the fox in the hen house with me. So when I went off to college, I made sure to go to the Xerox copier and take tons of photos of concept art and all sorts of stuff. And my storage unit is filled. I have overlays that you used to have for the coloring process, where there's these films, like you have a black layer of transparent film with all the inks and the red, cyan, yellow, all those kind of things on there. I have a bunch of those from Rune. I mean, it was, I stayed a collector during my time there. Let's just put it that way.
Oh my God! So if Marvel
concepts, I would love to see some of those concept sketches.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'll post some stuff, and I have a lot of stuff from when Protectors. I worked with Roland on the Genesis. I worked under Roland during the Genesis line, so there's a lot of the original character designs and things like that I have, and some characters that weren't even used. So
with the when they went from Rogue Prime to Final Form Prime, so those concepts that Norm did on the unused costume designs, I love seeing that kind of stuff where you had more gold piping down between the red and blue, and character concepts. I love that kind of stuff.
Oh, totally. If could I share my screen? I don't know if you guys ever one little thing to show you guys. I think would be kind of cool. Let me make sure I have it pulled up here. So Black September, there's some Easter eggs, and I'm not too sure if anybody saw this, but all right. Let's see. Sorry, just a minute. All right, here we go. I made sure to cue this up. All right, so this was the first book that I colored, which was Black September, right?
Oh, I remember looking for Easter eggs.
Yeah. So
I see Goku.
Yeah, my friends and I were big fans of Dragon Ball, and this is before word of it even got stateside. I mean, I was importing videos of Dragon Ball from France because I spoke a little French just to get it. So we threw in Goku's in there. So I would say the Ultraverse probably has the first North American appearance of Goku from Dragon Ball. And here you can see there's Gohan. We put some of the Mortal Kombat characters in there. My friend Keith Conroy drew this. So because we're all in the same fandom, I would color things. On the bottom right, you can see Johnny Cage from Mortal Kombat. That's was it Tote from Raiders of the
from
Lost
Raiders
Ark?
of the Lost Ark, yeah.
He's there. And in the bottom right corner here, you can see Destro, Boba Fett. And so, I just thought
I see Destro there.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. And I shared the link to the stream in the G.I. Joe comic collectors group that I manage also.
Oh, nice.
I'm definitely going to share that for sure. That's amazing. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. And the very last thing, because I'm all excited about this, is the one piece of artwork I wish I had taken a photocopy of because it's lost to time is when Malibu was about to get sold. It was originally going to be sold to DC Comics.
Yeah.
And there was, I remember, I think it was Hank Canals or Roland Mann, I can't remember which of the two, gave me a piece of artwork. And I didn't know what was going on, but they said, we want you to, take a photostat of this, which is, scan it, with develop the film. And they said, do not tell anybody in the office what this is. And it was a pinup of Mantra with Batman. And I think it was drawn by maybe Gene Ha, maybe. I can't remember. Or it might have been Mike Orengo. I can't remember. It was very nice, but it's a black and white image. And I was like, under confidentiality, I'd go in there, get it done, hand it back to them, and couldn't say anything to anybody. But it was a beautiful piece of artwork. So that's a lost piece of content that would be amazing if it turns out.
Ever since I found out the fact that DC was going to be the ones originally going to buy Malibu, I always think of like a what if. What could have happened, all the really cool stories they could have done.
Yeah, definitely. So, but I know, I don't know if the other guest is getting ready. I could go on like anybody else. I could go on forever, but
well, no, you're good. We've still got Jeff Johnson's not going to join us for another couple minutes. So,
okay, sure.
If we can keep you for the next.
Yeah,
5 minutes,
please.
If you don't mind, it's awesome.
He's not here yet, so
okay, perfect. Yeah, these stories are. This is. To me, it's fascinating to hear these things. I had no idea about those Easter eggs and stuff, though. That's wow. So that means somewhere in my collection, I have the first appearance of Goku.
Yes.
That's kind of a shakeup in the comic industry, right there. Right?
It is.
American appearance of Goku ever published was in Malibu Comics.
You heard it here, folks. It's a UltraCon exclusive, shaking things up a little bit. That's pretty interesting. And those you mentioned the Mantra and Batman piece. It sounds like a piece you would have saw in. Do you remember the full page pinup books that Malibu would do, like the Mutants versus Ultras and stuff?
Yeah,
it's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it looked like it was like a cover image, and it was Batman in the background, like maybe like a bust of him from like the chest up, and then in the foreground was Mantra, and so it was like at a diagonal, and it was absolutely gorgeous.
And thinking about it, she would fit in with like the whole Ra's al Ghul storyline stuff like that too. Would be like works so well with Batman.
Oh, definitely. It was really, really, really cool. There was also here's a fun one. I don't know what happened to it, but there was a Tim Vigil drawing for Nightman Wolverine crossover. Yep. And I would like maybe the other people on the tour can remember, but so there were two versions. There was one I think with there was one version of the cover that was Wolverine, and he had beaten up Night. Yeah. There was a Tim Vigil cover, but it never got released, or it got heavily doctored because it was Wolverine screaming with his claws open, and the decapitated head of Nightman in his hand, the body on the ground, and just like the spine, Tim Vigil's artwork and stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, one of my friends in editorial, they had faxed that over to Marvel for approval. And I forget who it was, but one of the editor, whoever was in charge at Marvel, wrote back, and all the facts did was it just had one word, no, and that was it. But it was this really gnarly drawing of Wolverine with the decapitated Nightman. It was crazy.
That is bananas. Do you remember the FF comic that Stan signed for you? What number it was?
I don't, but it was one of the recent ones, so it wasn't one that he directly worked on. It was like one from the 90s. It was just what they had on hand, but still, it was great. And I see Jeff's here, so
yeah.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up, Jeff Johnson in the house?
I never heard the Tim Vigil thing. I remember Tim Vigil from back in the 90s, working on, I guess it was Faust, and I realized that and he's an amazing artist, and that's just a kind of drawing I'm never going to be able to do. Like I can't. I cannot draw that gory stuff. I've never even really tried, but he did. I can picture it in my mind.
Yeah, it was wild, and I don't want to eat out into any more of Jeff's time, but I just gotta say I'm so happy I've gotten acquainted with Jeff, and I would say the last year or so personally, and like I've always been a huge fan of his work, and his solitaire work was amazing. So it's like I know the man himself now, so the fandom just keeps going. That's all.
Excellent! Thanks, Curtis.
No, it's awesome. Hey, listen, thanks for taking part on our live stream today. We really appreciate it. We are very grateful for the stories that and everything you're doing still for the industry. We're really excited to see where your comic goes. So best of luck to you, Curtis, and we will talk to you soon.
And
if you haven't gotten it, it's great.
Look, Jeff's got the book too.
Oh, I got a screenshot of this. That's wow. That's pretty awesome.
Showing off.
Yep.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Real big shout out again to Stephen for letting us hijack his live stream in what he would normally do on YouTube. For those of you joining us, we are winding down with our last, but certainly not least, guest for the UltraCon live stream that we're doing this year. We have the incredible, talented, legendary Jeff Johnson with us. Jeff,
that's too much.
Oh no, I have more adjectives. I have a whole thing of
sounds too
adjectives
much.
over I could use. No, it's super cool. Thank you for coming on with us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very awesome that you joined us, and we had Scott Rosenberg and Dave Olbrich and Tom Mason. Curtis was just on here and stuff. Jeff, for those of you who live under a rock and don't know, Jeff is a amazing comic book artist and worked on a little title called Solitaire for
I love Solitaire.
for Malibu. One of the coolest books in the line, visually stunning looking character and stuff. So, Jeff, we don't really have a format here. We're just kind of bouncing stuff around and stuff. So,
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started. Let's start with comics in general. How did you get started in the industry?
Well, when I was a kid, I moved around a lot, and so I started reading comics when I was super young, like 4, 5, and so I fell in love with comics. And then at some point, I don't know, I must have been, I guess, 10 years old. I just decided. I think I figured out that someone drew the comics, and that was someone's job. And so once I realized that was a job that a person could have, then I wanted that job. That's what I wanted to do. So. Oh, excellent! Thanks.
There you go.
That's a fun cover. That's still one of my all-time favorites. And Barb did such a great job inking it. Yeah, that was a good one. That was one of those ones where it is sometimes a cover. I'm not a good cover artist the way Dave Johnson is or Dan Panosian. Those guys are great cover artists. My covers tend to be much more like, this is what's happening inside the book. I definitely come from that school. But with those covers, I decided to tell a story on its own. I was experimenting, and I wanted to have, and I didn't tell anyone I was doing it because I didn't want anyone to tell me no, I couldn't do that. So I wanted to tell a story of splash pages that came out on the covers. And so by the time we did 22 issues, we would have a whole nother comic that you would have gotten for free, that you could just put the covers together and you would have had like a silent comic. That was the dream, but we only got to, I think, issue 6. So, and then they realized what I was doing. They're like, hey, these seem like they go together. And then they rolled them into the final issue, which is fine. It was a good way to do it. But that cover came out. It was good. That was a plan that actually worked, which, as you know, a lot of times in life it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So anyway, I was a kid and I discovered I wanted to do comics. I thought, if this is a job, this is the job I want. And then in high school, a buddy and I did a newspaper strip for our local newspaper, a little action-packed newspaper strip. We got paid, I think it was like $15 for the pencils and inks of the thing. And then once I got out of high school, I was just, I joined the Army and I was an illustrator in the Army. And then when I got out, I just tried to break in at Marvel and DC and eventually did. So I mean, it just took persistence, right? You just go to, back in the day, before the internet, you would actually just go to comic book conventions and meet people, and then you would get phone numbers and addresses. It's super analog, and then it took a few years, but I built my skills up and made enough friends that I got hired by Fabian to do Wonder Man, and then after that, it's just been kind of that's just what I do, is draw comics and animation.
So, well, thank you for your service to the country for sure. And
I mean, I was in the 80s and I was an illustrator, so it was incredibly easy. I was in an air-conditioned office making propaganda.
Right.
Not. That was my service was it was a cakewalk.
It's still something. Anyway, and so you were literally one of those guys that we would see at conventions, going, like, would have their portfolio with them or their stack of stuff and say, "Hey, here's my samples. Look over it. Tell me what you think." And just having to, were you ever discouraged? Did you ever get discouraged doing that at all? I've heard sometimes artists would get discouraged by what they heard.
I'm not going to say who, but a professional told me not to quit my day job early on, which I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I found that very motivating. So maybe he did it on purpose. And then I mean, it's tough to break in. I mean, I don't know what it's like to break in now. I'm assuming it's complicated and requires a ton of determination and focus. But back then, there wasn't really a system. You just went around, like, you just hoped for the best. I did do a bunch of work early on that I never got paid for, which is a very typical thing for 18, 20-year-old guys trying to break into comics to do. It's like you get a script, you practice, you hope you're going to get paid. You don't, but you got some experience. And then, but for me, it wasn't really ever that discouraging because I didn't know that's the only thing I wanted to do. So I just kept going. And then around 23, I broke in. Fabian was one of my patrons for sure, because he would send me scripts and then I would send him the stuff that I had done, and he would see where I had improved and let me know stuff that I needed to work on. And so he was instrumental in me learning the craft of not only doing the work, but taking notes and learning how to make adjustments. And eventually when he thought I was good enough, he gave me work. So my story is actually pretty easy when it comes to like how I got in. I met the right person and they gave me an avenue. So and I don't remember who my editor on Solitaire was. I can't remember which of them it was. I could look for you. Oh, I don't have a book here.
Crack open that book you've got there, Stephen.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, and that's so getting in was, I mean, it was discouraging in that I think finding any path in a career can be discouraging, but I don't think comics was harder than being an actor or music or anything. In fact, it might have even been a little bit easier because back then there weren't that many of us. It was a very small group of people trying to do comics in the late 80s is when I was trying to break in the early 90s when I finally did. It was still pretty tiny comparatively. Image had not busted out. Marvel had not, maybe it's 20 or 40 books a month. Like there wasn't the massive flooding of the market, and there weren't as many publishers, and there were small publishers, but and back then there was no money in it. So no one really cared. Right? Like when I first broke in, my dream was to make $45,000 a year. To me, that would have been huge. And that was very easy to do back then if you were just consistently a comic book artist.
Sure.
But they're really, like, I got in right as royalties started happening. I mean, I got in for a lot of great stuff, right? Like I got in when pages were being returned. I got in when royalties were a part of the system. I got in, like, back in the day, I don't know if you remember, I would go to lots of shows, but I would go for free, and I never really sold anything. And I only went to shows just because I liked going to shows. Like, there was no, sketching wasn't huge. In fact, I gave a lot of sketches for free back in the day. No one charged for signatures.
I do have the editor. It's editor is Hank. I'm pretty pronouncing butchering his last name, Canals.
Oh, Hank Canals. Yeah, Hank's awesome. Yeah, Hank has gone on to do tons of stuff in the industry. I mean, I think he's the X-Men editor for a while, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, Hank's brilliant.
So just like Kurtis, a lot of tenacity, a lot of grind.
Right.
But yeah, one interesting thing that you mentioned is that the change in the landscape for a creator, say, back in the day when they didn't get their pages returned.
Right.
But now the industry has changed a little bit, and it's shifted and pivoted in such a way where now the creator at least has some rights to their work. They get some, at least, or gets their artwork back in some cases.
Right.
I don't know if you get it all back or not, but
generally you get, I mean, my experience, like I said, my experience growing up when I did and getting in when I did, I would say is almost blessed, right? Because I got in after the crazy work where artists did not get royalties and did not get their pages back. I got in a time where we did both of those things. So, but here's what's funny now is, like, you don't really even send your pages in anymore. Back in the day, you would send in the pencil page, and then someone would letter it and ink it, and then the company would take a picture of it, and then eventually they would send it back to you. Now you do all that yourself, and you send them a finished file for the most part, right? So there is no art return. I mean, I guess some people might still send pages in, but I don't know of anyone that does that anymore. So the days of racing to the FedEx office, to try and get a box in by 4:49, that doesn't happen anymore.
Right. Yeah. Tom mentioned when we were interviewing him how everyone was kind of waiting for the FedEx guy.
Oh yeah,
and stuff to come in and everything.
Yeah, the FedEx schedule we all used to know every part of it by heart. Like, oh, this is when this guy picks up this box. This is when you can get this one in. And if you blow that deadline, you can drive to the airport and get a couple of extra hours if you go to the airport FedEx office. So yeah, it used to be a major part of your day.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other questions in the chat. It looks like Dave is asking, how were you approached to work on the Ultraverse?
So I was working on Wonder Man, and then I had done a couple of Spider-Man issues during my run on Wonder Man, and then it's a pretty small business. So when you're, and I think I don't know if I called anyone over there, but someone, I guess maybe it was Alan who called me. Just a friend said, "Hey, we're doing a thing." Derek was doing stuff. He had done Nightman. And so I think they had contacted Derek, and they had reached out to me. And I think it's just that easy. Someone just called me and said, "Hey, we're putting together a line. Would you like to participate in developing character and doing stuff?" So, and that was it. I mean, it's a pretty insular business. So if one guy says something, everyone hears it. So at least, especially back then. So Derek was like, "Hey, Jeff, we're doing this cool thing." I'm like, "Oh, great. Yeah, I'd be into that." And then you get a phone call, and then you're in a thing. It's just that there's really not much more to it.
Right? It's just, it's all connected. Everything's connected, right? Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Now, as someone else asked, talking about Wonder Man, they want to know whose idea was it for the Wonder Man mini poster, "You'll Believe a Man Can Lift a Wall"?
Oh, I'm sure that was me.
It's great.
I'm almost sure it was either Fabian or me, but I always wanted, because I always thought those were cool. Right. So I suggested a lot of stuff for Wonder Man. I'm like, oh, no, there was a Sideways issue because I wanted to do a Sideways issue. I just always thought they were cool when I wanted to do one.
Yeah. Visually, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about your art style. And I've from following you from different companies, from Marvel to Valiant, and to Malibu and stuff. Visually, I recognize your style instantly. It's it's very cool. And I like how the way you can tell a story in just a couple pages, or even one page. Even you're able to convey a lot in very little.
Oh, thanks.
Which is pretty sweet. In fact, one of my treasures I have is a piece of art that you did for me, which was a mashup of the Man of Steel and Solar Man of the Atom, because you worked on this issue of that. Yeah. I have that. I'll have to share that at some point in the. That
was a fun piece.
Yeah, because you worked on the final issue of that book.
I did.
So yeah, it's super cool.
Solar is one of those characters where his costume design's so simple, but it works. It's so good.
It's a great costume design for sure. Yeah, that was a really, really fun book. Like I said, my career I've been very lucky. Like I've done a couple of full-time comic books. Like I did Way of the Rat and Wonder Man were monthly for a couple of years, and it's a serious grind, especially when you can be as obsessive as I am about every little detail, and it's usually a nightmare on all the poor people I have to work with. But then I've been incredibly lucky bouncing around to Green Lantern, Solar, Legend of Supreme. I got to do all kinds of really cool stuff by doing an issue here and an issue there.
Do you have a title that you haven't worked on that you've been like, oh, I got to draw that book at some point?
No, I've been, like I said, I've gotten to do all the childhood fantasies. I've done the Justice League, and I did Wonder Man who had basically every character. We had a crossover. We had all that stuff in it. I got to do Green Lantern. I think there was one project that I was supposed to do with Keith Giffen when Valiant was around. We were going to do a relaunch of Magnus Robot Fighter, and it just didn't work out. Like we had started working on it. Keith had written a bunch of scripts. I was doing designs, and then just the companies, the tide shifted, and it didn't happen. So that's the only project that I was really invested in that I didn't get to do. And I think that would have been super fun. And there's always classics. Like I'd love to do Conan. I've always been a huge fan of the Warlord. I would do that in a second.
Oh man, that would be amazing. I'd like to see that. Someone asked if you've ever worked on G.I. Joe.
I did work on G.I. Joe, but not the comic. I worked on the cartoon. I worked on Resolute. And then I worked
That's one of the best animated.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah, I did character designs for Resolute.
Oh man, I had no idea that. That's super
wow.
cool.
Joaquin DeSantos was directing over, and Dave was doing backgrounds at, I think it was Titmouse, and they needed someone to do some turns for the characters. So I did a bunch of turns for the stuff that, and Joaquin was designing the characters, and so I did a bunch of turns for those, and I did a bunch of background characters. But that show was awesome. That was one of my all-time favorite G.I. Joes.
Man, arguably one of the best animated versions of Joe out there since the original.
Oh, yeah, the action is unbelievable. The story is super intense. Yeah, it's a really great series.
Who were some of your? I realize there's going to be some softball questions. Who were some of your favorite artists growing up?
So when I was a kid, I think one of the first books I bought on my own was a John Buscema Savage Sword of Conan magazine. So obviously John's been a huge influence ever since. And then early on, when I was at a comic book convention, Creation Con, I in an art contest, I won the art of Al Williamson, and I think I was 12 or 13 when that happened. And after that, I was hooked. I was an Al Williamson guy, and then that led to Crinkle and Frazetta, like all the old. And then from there, once you start going back, then you find Hal Foster, and you have Lou Fine, and then you get Gil Kane, and so you get all these older guys. So I definitely fell in love with the older Al Williamson style stuff. And then obviously John Byrne, George Perez's, you can't grow up in the 80s without falling in love with those guys.
No, totally. I totally agree with that. Gil Kane actually worked on didn't he work on either a Bravura or a Malibu title? Maybe Steven can tell me that. I don't remember. I think he did. I think it was a book. Maybe once somebody in the chat will remember it, but I could have
sworn. I know Perez did some Prime.
Perez, he originated the Ultra Force comic. So
right, yeah, that sounds great.
It's just amazing work.
Yeah, for sure. So the Solitaire, if I recall, if I remember correctly, there's two versions. There's a standard cover, which the classic purple cover, and then the polybagged issue with the trading cards and stuff. So when Malibu is going through the process of, they said, okay, well, we want to do this book.
Our wonderful chat provider.
Thank you. Yes, that's what it was. Nice. I was like, was it called The Edge? Yes, that's it. Yeah, thank you. I saw an ad in an old previews magazine I had for that when I was before the live stream. So thank you. I totally lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh, Solitaire. When you mentioned that you were the industry is so close, they call you up and say, hey, here's this, I want to work on this or whatever. When they were doing Solitaire 1, you're working on it, did they ever come to you and say, hey, here's our idea for the book, here's what we want to do, we're going to do a polybagged issue with a trading card and all this stuff? does the artist have any input on that? Could you say, I don't know if that's a good idea? Did anyone ever how involved in that process of marketing is the artist in something like that, if any?
Well, I know for me, I wasn't at all. I was just working on the book, and they might have told me that they were going to do that, and I'm sure all I said was great.
Okay.
Right. I didn't have an opinion about that. And when it comes to like the Wonder Man stuff, putting the poster in, I think that I might have even, because I would just throw stones at the moon for Wonder Man when it came. So I had no idea about marketing or any of that stuff. It's just stuff I thought was cool. Like when Fabian asked me who I wanted to be my inker, I asked if Terry Austin was free, which is a ridiculous thing to ask for for your first book ever. But I love Terry's work, and I thought, why not? And then he was free for the first 3 issues and the rest of the covers. So not really marketing decisions. So yeah, I don't really have anything to do with any of that. That's not, but me, pie in the sky, that's more my thing.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm kind of geeking out a little bit because I'm such a big fan too. So Stephen, I'm going to pitch it to you for a second. Do you have any questions for Jeff while I take a breath?
It's a little silly question. With on Solitaire's design, is there a reason one boot was longer than the other?
Yeah. So I designed him to because in my mind he was a kid who was struggling. Right. He doesn't know if he's coming or going. His dad's a crime boss. And so. The asymmetrical boot and glove design was to sort of show some of that.
Okay.
And I kind of liked the idea of him, whichever way he faced, he was kind of I'm going this way, I'm going that way. It's a different kind of look. And the colors I picked is because I always thought of him as being kind of a huge emotional and physical bruise. So I wanted him to be those purples and blues.
That's cool. I never would have thought about that. I just really like how the teals and the purples work together.
Yeah. So he's kind of
it's also too a superhero color scheme. I never would have thought to put together too, that teal and purple.
Yeah. Well, most superheroes are primary colors, right? So you've got your reds, blues, and yellows, and then your secondary colors, your purples and your greens and your oranges and whatnot. But purple is almost always saved for kind of a villain, like your Darth Vaders and your Dooms and whatnot.
And they're paired with green for some reason.
I think there was a Marvel villain called the Eel, maybe, that actually wore blue and purple. I think his full costume was color. Yeah. Cool.
So I picked those colors and went with that sort of asymmetrical design because I wanted to just what would a costume that this kid was putting together, what would it look like? And there's sort of a Harlequin vibe to it too, So yeah, that was the thinking that went into it. And the scarf is just it looks cool, but I wanted to have him do scarf fighting. It's made of it was a hardcore Kevlar-y kind of. It wasn't made of just cloth, so it would have been a cool whip and fighting tool. So it would have been cool, but I never got to that.
I wish it could have got run longer because I really love the book.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, he's an interesting character. I really liked working on him.
It was something too, a little new too with the comics when you thought about the nanotech in its bloodstream and.
Yeah, it would have been because eventually he would have become more robot than man, which would have been the next kind of emotional question to deal with. Yeah, it's I made the mistake actually. I think early on is I had him get blown up a little too much. He gets pretty shot. He gets pretty shot up in the beginning, and I soon realized that he's probably already 100% nanite by the second issue. Yeah,
that's funny. You should have a meter going.
Oh, right, exactly.
Yeah, the humanity meter.
Now I'm a robot.
Issue 2, he's just all cyborg, right? That's right. That's crazy. Did he have the interesting thing that I liked about Solitaire? His look, he stood out among the other Ultraverse characters, which they all looked unique, but his design really looked cool. Did he undergo a lot of changes? Did you have a design for him that didn't work out, or was that, did you just pop him out of your mind and say, here he is, boom, I'm done?
I had a lot of, so it took me a while to actually come up with him. I'm not as good at character design as I like. It's designing a new costume is tricky because it's basically just a skin tight outfit, generally speaking. So there's not a lot of shape to mess around with.
Right.
So it took me quite a while to figure out where. I think I've been goofing around with a bunch of stuff, and I have designs somewhere in an old sketchbook. I'll have to see if I can't dig them out. It took me a long time to hit on the asymmetrical glove and boot design. And once I had that element, everything else kind of fell into place. But once I had the finished costume design, I just presented it to those guys. There wasn't a whole lot of back and forth. I handed it to them, they're like, "Oh, cool," and that was kind of it. But that process took, I would say, probably a month of me wandering around the house, not getting anything done. Just trying to think of something original.
Sure.
And he's not even 100%. I mean, it's still a costume, right? Like it's still, and he's got guns, and so I mean, I think that's always very fun. But it's costume design's hard in comics. It's hard to come up with new. I mean, especially when you think of all the things that Kirby did on the fly. It's hard to play in that arena and not constantly be holding yourself up to this ridiculous standard. You're like, well, it's got to be innovative and and connective and totally fits the character. But you're like, it's just a guy, and it's still just a guy in a suit.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be in theory an easy job. Hey, I just want to come up with a superhero or whatever, but coming up with something unique that A, hasn't already been done, or B, looks like it's robbing from another artist or whatever. I mean, Jack Kirby, my God, like he's how deep did that go? I mean,
oh my God, it's incredible. The more and more I study him as I get older, the more I realize that he was operating on a totally different level.
Yeah. As I get older, I definitely have, like, I liked him when I was a kid, but as an adult, you see his influences in stuff, especially in movie. Thor Ragnarok, huge Kirby influence throughout that entire thing. The half the movie looks like it walked right out of a Kirby.
Absolutely, yeah,
for sure.
The statues on the outside, they had Beta Ray Bill, like classic Beta Ray Bill as a statue outside the arena. And
yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
I should have asked Scott about this. Was there if there was ever an idea or a thought of adding Solitaire to Ultra Force?
I do think that there was conversation about it, but like he was still. I think before he was able to really join the Ultraverse in any kind of meaningful way, he had a couple arcs that he had to go through on his own. He's not really much of a team player.
They did have Volume 2 of Prime, Hillman Prime teamed up a little bit.
That's right.
Well, yeah, Scott Collins did a great Solitaire Prime miniseries that was awesome. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So, but yeah, it was definitely opposites. Getting through the day.
So, like, I'm genuinely curious as an artist that's still in the industry, working in the industry and stuff. Social media has kind of changed the landscape where fans can communicate with each other. And obviously, we started the Ultraverse group so fans could communicate about stuff. Like, where do you think the industry's gonna look 30 years from now? Looking back at Ultraverse, we're now 30 something years out from Ultraverse being a part of it. Where do you think what's the industry going to look like 30 years from now?
I mean, I honestly have I can't even, if I could answer that question.
Do you think we're going to go full digital, or do you think we're still going to be publishing comics, or what?
I do think there's something about holding a comic in your hand and collecting a comic that's never going to go away. Like there is, because the comic it's more than just the story. And the same reason I think that the printed books are still gonna be around. How they get made, I don't know. I'm assuming, like, I know a lot of people now. I still work on paper for Rogue's Kingdom, and it adds a lot of time to the process, and I shouldn't do it, but I still like working on paper. And so I do think that a lot of guys now almost work exclusively digitally. Which it's more time efficient, and the work is amazing, and you can add all these layers to your storytelling that you can't do with just a pencil and ink. And so I do think that the storytelling will become more and more sophisticated as more and better tools are being used. I do know that I read a lot of manga and I enjoy manga, and I do think that long-term storytelling is still going to I think it's going to always be around, because people, once you fall in love with a character, you kind of always want to have access to that person. So I do think that there's going to always be comics and manga and illustrated stories. How we get them, I have no idea. Honestly, I don't know. I know digital was the fear, but that didn't actually kill comics, printed comics. It added to them. I know motion comics came and went. I do know that that the different forms, black and white, color, single panel, I do think there's lots of different mediums that people have access to. I just don't know. I don't know where the genres, what genre will be popular at any given time, right? Like, I still love superhero comics, but my favorite comic at the moment is Shaolin Cowboy, who is not really a superhero, but it's just gorgeous. And then I don't know. I think that the characters of myth, right? Like the Superman, the Hercules, the Batman, those icons, those archetypes are always going to be with us because they serve some sort of storytelling function. That would be a very long conversation that I don't, but we've all thought about like what makes a character have longevity. Like, why is Captain America still around? Like, why is Batman still so popular? There's something deeply intellectual and emotional and probably psychological that we all respond to in these characters. So I imagine that kind of character will still be around, but I don't know if they'll wear a costume or use a gun or fight or have. Do you remember that Marvel comic, the What If, the joke one, where it's like, right,
where the Watcher's like, stop on the cover.
Yeah.
Stop reading this book. Yes, I read that many times as a kid.
There's a great segment in there where Spider-Man fights the Thinker, and they have a philosophical debate. And I always thought that was, I don't know if you remember that one or not, but I always thought that was a funny way for superhero comics to solve a problem. And I just wonder, like, I have no idea where we're going to go. I, for my own edification and joy, I would love to still see, like, I like a fight scene. I like a sword fight, a gunfight. I like superheroes throwing each other through walls. I still love that stuff.
Same.
Yeah, so I hope that stuff is still around, but I have no idea where we're going.
When it comes to like physical media, to me, I'm old, so you see the bigger.
Sure.
But I like physical media, like it just, the tactile sensation of having it, reading through my books. Even when it comes to like movies, I still buy Blu-rays, and which Best Buy don't even carry anymore.
Yeah, I know, it's harder and harder to find like analog material. Though Blu-ray isn't quite analog, but it's still like a physical thing. Yeah, and
it will never go away. People don't understand when you buy something digital, it don't mean you own it forever. If that company goes under, like one of these anime companies, like the mergers, like the Crunchyroll or one of these ones, they merge with
the anime channel. Yeah,
they merge with another company, and one of the companies, all the digital copies you bought through them are going away.
Right.
You don't go with the merger of the new company.
Yeah,
but I know it's Funimation bought absorbed Crunchyroll, and Funimation's all stuff's going away.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's kind of why I wanted to ask the question. I know it's kind of weird, but like I'm genuinely interested in that because I have children, and right now my stepdaughter, she's 12, and she enjoys going to comic conventions now. She enjoys going to she stands in line with me to meet artists. She has a book that she takes to all the different artists and gets them to sign or even do a little sketch in the book for and everything. And I just, you wonder, what's the landscape going to be like? Are they still going to publish comic books, or are they going to go digital, or, you look at the streaming channels that they have now, and you just can't beat the experience of going to a comic book shop on a Tuesday or Wednesday, to me,
Right.
You know, bumping elbows with somebody that collects comics like you do, strike up a complete a conversation with a complete stranger about the business, about something they read in something or whatever. And you know, the industry has changed a lot in the last 30 years. So it's just I'm just wondering what it'll be like 30 years from now. You know, when
I mean, honestly, I can't even imagine when I broke in, like, and I'm dating myself, like, I graduated high school in 1986, right? And so the idea of computers, like, we had the occasional computer in school where you were supposed to maybe learn some basic programming. And just the idea, like, no one had thought of, like, the internet didn't exist. You know who came up with the internet was in Mother Box, and your personal, you're carrying your personal computer around, was Kirby back in the day with New Gods, right? Like, the guy of instantaneous, like, of knowing, just being able to ask it anything and having it just right, or Brother Eye, right? All, like, he would be the guy to ask what stuff's going to look like in 30 years. But for me, I just have, I mean, I can't even imagine not buying a comic when you want to read a comic. I will buy comics if I can't get to the store and I want to catch up on a story. So I'll buy a run or whatever. But I don't get the same sort of joy. I'm 56, Geekview, by the way.
That's Dave.
Yeah.
That's Dave.
Yeah. Super 56, super old. So I won't even be around in 30 years. I don't know what you're asking me for. I can't help.
I'm not worried about comics. I'm gonna be worried about who's gonna help me to the car, right?
Exactly.
This is one of the things what Shane was talking about. When they go to like a old comic book shop and you still got you can walk in, you can smell the newsprint. It's just takes you back.
Absolutely, it is a time machine. It's a portal to another dimension. And I think that the computer is great for comics and reading comics, and I want anyone who can buy digital. If they want to buy digital, great, buy digital and save it and have it. And it's I'm surrounded. I don't know if you can see. I'm surrounded by comics. All my books. You can't see any of that stuff. It's dark. But
see the art on the wall though.
Oh yeah, I love analog. I love comics. I love old books. I have a huge library, and a lot of times, if you're looking for something on your computer, you have to know that you're looking for it and go to it. I can just look over and then find inspiration in the fact that I don't remember what's over there. And I can be like, oh shit, Warlord, awesome, right?
That's pretty sweet.
It's like one of the storylines back in the night. I think that was Marvel did back when it was with the Blood and Thunder with Thor, and I thought that would be like a great. You got Guardians of the Galaxy. They could have done something like that. It'd been really cool with the movies where Warriors Madness, which all the trauma and everything Thor's went through in the movies, that would be kind of cool to have done that.
Right. Well, I do think that one of when the movies are successful, in my opinion, is when they stay closest to the comic book. Like the first Iron Man, I mean, that's one of my all-time favorites. And I think that nailed the comic. And I think when they stay closer to the comic, then that's, to me, like the first Captain America nailed the comic. And I really believe that the source material doesn't need.
It's saddening. You see these interviews now with all the people they're hiring to be writers for the movies are being instructed: do not read the comics, don't research the comics.
I didn't know that. Is that a thing that's happening? That's unfortunate. Yep. Why do you think they're doing that?
No clue.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense.
It just. That's why the characters are no longer acting the way they're supposed to do in the comics. Is they're just making it up as they go.
Well, I think one of the things that the comics really did well was, like, yes, I know I was often criticized as comics being childish and parochial or whatever. However, when I was a kid, I read comics that there's serious themes. There's life and death. There's, Spider-Man worked his ass off to be a student, but then also fought the Juggernaut, right? Like, he did what he did. He had a job. He did all these things. It was the visual metaphors of fighting evil are always there, but like they're metaphors for real monsters that you have to face in your life. And I think that comics did that very well, and I still think does that very well. But I think that those are mature themes that you're dealing with in old school comics that I don't think people give them credit for.
I think Dave kind of nailed it here too. It's like with why they don't let them read the comics anymore. It's like Can't wait to show you something you've never seen before, said the egotistical director.
right. How dare you? Like, if you're not reading old Kirby, you're gonna never come close if you don't stand on that guy's shoulders.
Yeah, there has to be a happy middle ground somewhere between what's presented in the source material and what I get that, I understand that, but like even like my favorite movie is Superman the movie. Like,
great
original. Oh my gosh, like
yeah, great movie.
Even the stuff that gets away from the source material, which isn't much, it still stays true to the character. You never get an idea that this guy is not Superman throughout the movie. Yep. So yeah, I totally agree. Those first few Marvel movies, fantastic. Iron Man's just out of the park.
When they stuck to this, like I said, though, they stuck to the source material, they were so much better.
Right.
I
think my favorite Spider-Man movie is Into the Spider-Verse, and then the next one, like that is the source material all over the place. Like, that is a love letter to the comics, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we are winding down. Is there any stuff you got coming up down the pike?
So it's taken me longer than anticipated, but I'm Rogues is at the printer, and so we'll be getting doing that soon, and we'll be getting stuff out, and then I'll be kickstartering the next book, and then hopefully the third, fourth, and fifth ones will be coming faster and faster as we get this pipeline figured out.
And if you want like to talk about one that's getting republished, you want to do like promotion stuff, we're more than happy to promote it here.
Oh, right on. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it's been really interesting. I do think a lot of creators are going the Kickstarter and Indigo, like the self-publishing crowdsourcing way. And I do think that you're getting this renaissance of really cool, like unadulterated ideas that
100%.
And so I do think that, at least I don't know for the next 30 years, Stephen, but I do think in the next 10 for sure that the self, like when we say self-published, like it's going to be just a couple of guys and maybe even just one guy putting out cool stuff. So I do think that the new indie movement is crowdsourced and sent basically straight to your door. Because I mean, I've seen so much cool stuff. Kurtis's book, Patrick's book, there's so much stuff going out that is completely original, and like it's important to the people making it, right, in a way that a lot of, I think that I don't want to criticize other people how they make their comics, but I do think that the more corporate entities you have involved in a comic, the harder it is to get in like a personal feel for stuff. Back in the day when I was doing Wonder Man, it was really just me, the inker, the writer, and Fabian and the colorist, and like between me and Fabian would just ask, like, when I did the Sideways issue, I just asked to do the Sideways issue. That was the end of the conversation, because it didn't matter, because it was going to be printed the same way. I was just going to be drawing it differently. And I know now that my friend Scott tried to put a Sideways book. He did put a Sideways book out a while ago, and it was a major battle to get people to accept it, to believe it. And, it was. And I do think the fewer cooks there are in the kitchen, I generally think the better the soup.
I like when they do something new, like when Scott was talking about like the die cut ferret book was shaped like ferret's head, and just something like a little catchy thing like that. And I remember the one book had a hole cut through the entire circle of the book because they killed off one of the characters, and got through. Malibu did.
Yeah, Malibu was great for that. Their team, they had a lot of creative people on it. Yeah, there was a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah, I never would have thought to put trading cards in, like with the Solitaire book, and those were awesome. I loved them.
I remember the black polybag for Solitaire with like it was really striking having the silver line work in the black polybag.
I think there's still people in the group that are looking for all the different cards to complete their a full set of them. Because there's multiple cards, right? For the
I believe there's 4. I believe there's I don't have them.
I don't want to open my polybags. I know they're eventually going to.
I don't think I might have one polybag left somewhere in a box, but I don't. Oh. I was terrible about keeping stuff.
That was Protectors number 5 with the hole that's in the middle.
Oh, right on. Excellent.
Yeah. One last question. Somebody wanted to know if your Sideways book came out before or after the X-Force book.
I think it came out. I think it came out afterwards. I think it's issue 16, but I don't remember.
Okay.
Before the X-Force book? I don't remember that either.
Okay. Are you talking? He may be talking about the Spider-Man book that Todd McFarlane drew, that had the X-Force in it. Maybe, I don't know. Spider-Man.
I don't know. I know that it came out after the Fantastic Four Sideways book for sure.
That burned you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's because that's why I wanted to do it.
I just picked that book up the other day.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good
chance
issue.
to read it. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, listen, we can find you on. Oh, look, he's got his cards there. He's got his solitaire card. Oh, those are the Malibu trading cards.
Oh, those are great. Those are great too.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So you're on social media. Where can people find you, Jeff?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Johnsonverse. That's
cool. And do you do commissions?
I do commissions. I have not been. I've been busy doing a bunch of other animations in comic book stuff lately, and finishing up Rogues and getting it off Kickstarter and stuff. So my commission list has been down. But I, as I wrap other stuff up, I'll have some slots open. So if people are interested, just give me a contact.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you again. We ended very strong for the stream with you. Thank you, Jeff Johnson, for being a part of the UltraCon live stream.
Oh, it was an honor, guys. It was great. I love talking about comics and Malibu. Those are great times. Those are great comics.
I do have one sad thing about this. The thing I regret about this whole thing. This is only a once a year thing.
Oh.
Yeah, the UltraCon, the whole idea of it was in the group, because we have some people that just come in the group that just want to sell stuff, unfortunately. And I'm not about that. I wanted people to talk about it and talk about fans first, not necessarily the money stuff.
I meant like once a year, like get to talk to everybody, like this whole.
Well, we should do a live stream like this more. You should do a live stream like this more. This is your thing, man.
I'm happy to come and talk about comics anytime. Yeah,
I would love to have set up like this to be a regular thing. So comics is part of my channel as well too. It's like we just don't get to talk about it as much.
Well, there you
go. What do you talk about mostly? What is it? What do you collect mostly?
We do toy stuff a lot, and a friend of mine's got a comic book shop. He does like weekly shop unboxings.
Okay.
But we did early on. We did some like comic book talk, but he doesn't get time to do that too much. But I would love to have like standing like this thing. This has been so great getting to talk to everybody and celebrate what everything was. Talk about the great stuff you did with the Ultraverse, Malibu Comics, and your careers and what you're doing now. It's just great history of learning some of the ins and outs and the stuff that happened in the back end too.
Oh yeah, no, I still love comics. I loved them since I was 4 years old, and I love them today. Like I still read comics every day. It's so. And
getting to find out too, Kurtis was talking about that mock-up of the Batman Mantra cover. I would have loved.
Yeah, that would have been super cool. Yeah, and plus I would love to see though. I mean, I wonder if there's a sketch out there of the Wolverine.
Cutting off Batman's head.
Yeah, that would be. I would be into seeing that. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, we've went long, unfortunately, and I'm going to have to hop off here. But again, to answer some of the questions that people have, you can join us. You can check out my G.I. Joe group at G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero Comic Collectors on Facebook. We got about 4,000 people over there that love G.I. Joe. And if you've enjoyed this, come check us out on the Ultraverse group as well. Jeff's there. All of the founders are there. It's a really awesome group. Jeff, Stephen, thank you so much for and all of you guys for being a part of this. We really, really appreciate it, and we'll do it again for sure. So
thank you all.
Ultraverse, and you guys be awesome.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.